I call to order the May 2025 meeting of the Mission Fulfillment Committee of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for those who are joining us via live stream video and those attending here in our boardroom on the Twin Cities campus and those via Zoom. I will also welcome our student representative, Simon Moreno, who's zooming in from the Duluth campus. The first item of business this morning is review and action on promotion and tenure and annual continuous appointments. Vice Provost Beth Lewis will join Provost Croson for a brief overview of the process, followed by a vote on the recommendations included in today's docket materials. Finally, we'll hear from our panel of faculty. Provost Croson, would you like to get us started this morning?
Thank you, Chair Johnson and members of the committee. For our first presentation today, we'll provide our annual report on evaluations of faculty across the university system for promotion and tenure, and of academic professionals for continuous appointments. Can you move to the next slide? The Board of Regents policy on faculty tenure states that tenure and promotion imply selectivity and choice. They are awarded for academic and professional merit, not for seniority. The length and intensity of the review leading to the grant of tenure ensures the retention of well-qualified faculty committed to the university's mission. In this presentation, we will briefly describe the details of the tenure and promotion review process and provide some additional data on success rates. We will then ask for the board to take action on this year's list of recommended promotions, followed by a panel presentation from 3 of our remarkable newly tenured professors. The hiring decision is the first tenure and promotion decision. Faculty are selected from top graduate programs globally, ensuring that they have the potential to achieve tenure. Once hired, junior faculty enter a probationary period where they establish independent scholarship. They publish peer-reviewed works, secure external funding, and produce artistic and creative work. They must also demonstrate effective teaching and advising, contributing to the university's mission. During this period, junior faculty undergo annual reviews by tenured faculty to assess their progress. If progress is insufficient, they receive additional support, career counseling, or their appointment is terminated. The formal tenure review typically occurs in the 6th year of the probationary period. Candidates compile an extensive dossier demonstrating that they meet the tenure criterion in their discipline. To tell you more about this process, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Vice Provost Lewis.
Thank you, Provost Croson, Chair Johnson, and members of the committee. This slide outlines the tenure review process for faculty for all campuses. After external reviewers assess the candidate's dossier, tenured faculty above the candidate's rank, and against the departmental criteria, vote and forward the dossier with their vote to the college or campus committee. The dean or chancellor then reviews and recommends the dossier to the provost, who makes the final recommendation to the board. At the Duluth campus, the chancellor makes the tenure recommendation, which is then sent to the provost for inclusion with other recommendations to the Board of Regents. This process is similar for continuous appointments for academic professionals, mainly librarians in our library system, as well as a few working in the law school clinics. As one part of our efforts to better understand and support the experiences of faculty at the University of Minnesota, we closely monitor our rates of tenure success. The metric for tenure success is determined by considering what happens to an entering cohort of untenured assistant professors 7 years after beginning an appointment at the university. This year, the cohorts of tenure-track faculty we are considering began in 2015, 2016, and 2017. We check each professor's progress and note which of 4 possible outcomes apply. They received tenure and stayed at the university, or they received tenure but subsequently left the university. They left the university without tenure. They may have left before going up for tenure, or they may have left after being denied tenure, or they are still at the university and on the tenure track. There were 309 faculty who began their appointments in this 3-year group. After 7 years, approximately 49% had received tenure and were still employed at the university, and 3% had received tenure and left the university. The 3-year average tenure success rate is thus around 15%. I will now turn the presentation back to Provost Croson.
Thank you, Vice Provost Lewis. One correction, the approximate 3-year average tenure success rate is about 52%, as indicated on the slide. That's okay. Chair Johnson, members of the committee, we're happy to answer any questions about the process of promotion and tenure, and we now present for your approval the following recommendations. That the regular faculty candidates listed in the docket be approved for tenure and/or promotion as indicated, and that the academic professional candidates listed receive continuous appointment and promotions as indicated.
Okay, thank you. So before we turn to any questions or discussion, is there a motion to approve the promotion and/or tenure of regular faculty, the promotion in rank of contract faculty, and the continuous appointment and promotion of the academic professional candidates as presented in the docket materials?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any questions? Okay, then there being no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Motion passes. Congratulations to everyone who received tenure, promotion, or continuous appointment. Okay. And thank you, Vice Provost Lewis, for your presentation.
Chair Johnson, members of the committee, at this point, I'm delighted to welcome a panel of faculty members who were promoted or tenured just now via your previous vote to offer us a brief view into their work. We've chosen these faculty to be with us this morning because of their excellence in research, teaching, and service, and also to illustrate the variety and breadth of the field-shaping scholarship at the University of Minnesota. They're complete bios in your docket, so I won't offer lengthy introductions, but joining us today is Craig Hill from the Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering at the Swenson College of Science and Engineering at the Duluth campus, Dr. Derek Salisbury, School of Nursing at the Twin Cities campus, and Dr. Sade Spencer, Department of Pharmacology at the Medical School at the Twin Cities campus. Melissa Benedict, who is a professor of trumpet from the School of Music, was scheduled to join us. However, she was asked to step in on an emergency basis for the Minnesota Orchestra today. She sends her regrets and thanks you for her understanding and hopes that you will come to see her perform.
She has talent.
Dr. Hill, I understand you'll be speaking first, so I'm delighted to turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Johnson, President Cunningham, and Provost Croson for the opportunity to come here and speak to you all on the board today. As was mentioned, I'm from the Mechanical and Industrial Engineering Department on the Duluth campus. And so if you ask my 6-year-old daughter Miriam what I do, she would say, I love to learn about waves and buoys. And she's not wrong. Minnesota is the land of water, and I started my journey here actually at St. Anthony Falls Lab down here on the Twin Cities campus, and really set the pathway to where I am today. And I think the university continues to really support that work and provide the platform and the space for me to pursue the work that I really love to do. The Duluth campus is an outstanding place to pursue that work on Lake Superior and on the inland waters throughout Minnesota. So my research focuses on challenges in marine environments. Everything from how do we make observations in these challenging cold climate marine environments such as the lakes in Minnesota or Lake Superior, and how do we use that data to inform decisions moving forward for our state. A lot of the data that I collect also is used to inform new emerging industries and blue economies. So things like how do we design energy converters that can harness energy from waves or currents? How do we design new technologies that can boost some of the economies that are growing in the marine environment? And how do we design new observation technologies that can be used on inland waters throughout Minnesota to understand how our lakes are changing, or how the waves on Lake Superior are impacting coastal communities as climate is changing and we're seeing less ice on the Great Lakes. As many around the university, we like to tie our research into our teaching. So I teach in fluid mechanics, sustainable energy systems, and are starting to spin up a lot of new maritime engineering courses on things like sensors and observations in marine environments, autonomous vehicles, surface and subsurface vehicles, and how that can aid shipping and personnel transport, and things like new energy technologies. And so through my teaching, I get to bring students down to the lake, engage them in feeling the waves on Lake Superior and understanding the waters of northern Minnesota. And so just some examples of why I'm excited to engage with our students. Many of them get to go off around the world and bring what they've learned in Minnesota to other places. Just yesterday, one of my recent graduates moved to Munich, Germany to continue or to begin his career with a company we've been collaborating with, developing an energy technology for marine environments. On Sunday, this weekend, an undergraduate mechanical engineer is taking some low-cost sensors we've designed with a cohort to Morocco for 6 weeks to work with communities there. And in about a month, a graduate student of mine, she is going to Singapore to talk about innovative water technologies developed here in Duluth and on the Great Lakes to understand how the Great Lakes can improve sustainable development and improve designs for marine communities. So with that, I really appreciate the opportunity to work here at the University of Minnesota and continue my efforts understanding the marine environment. And if you want to learn more about waves and buoys, just hop on I-35 and I'll meet you in Duluth. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. I think next we're going to Dr. Salisbury.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Johnson and members of the board. I'm Derek Salisbury, faculty member in the School of Nursing. And if you'd ask my fourth grade son, to describe his dad, he would probably say he likes brains. Okay, and that's kind of my research background. But a little bit more about myself. I'm a research faculty. I think of myself as an educator, father, partner, and a coach. I'm a clinical exercise physiologist. That's kind of my background. And my research really looks at lifestyle interventions for the prevention and treatment of chronic diseases, and most notably Alzheimer's disease and then peripheral artery disease. Not a lot of people know what peripheral artery disease is, but I always refer to it as, think about having heart disease, but in your lower extremities, okay? Instead of the little cramping you might get in your heart or tightness, you get that every day when you walk. Currently, kind of the research that has kind of narrowed down has looked at kind of the heart effects on the brain and potential quality of life in people with Alzheimer's disease. So specifically, we've completed 3 large-scale studies looking at the effects of aerobic exercise or cognitive training across Alzheimer's disease spectrum. So it could be from people with normal cognition but feeling some degree of memory impairment, to people with mild cognitive impairment, and even people with dementia. And then secondly, look at aerobic exercise paired with virtual reality cognitive training. We call it an exergame. And so basically our research participants are cycling and playing with an Xbox controller in a virtual reality environment and doing some brain games. One thing I like, to really portray when I talk to people about my research is it's really great we can do this stuff in a laboratory, but the impact it really is shown when we're able to move it into the communities. And, we are fortunate enough, my colleagues in the School of Medicine and School of Public Health, to receive a School of Medicine Academic Investment Research Program Award. And we really looked at increasing awareness and understanding and early intervention for dementia in our rural communities. We were successfully able to complete the 5 individual projects, and then now this has kind of led to the formation of the Center for Engaged Research for Dementia and Alzheimer's Disease. We call this CERDAR, and we're submitting, Tuesday it goes in for a large program projects grant. And our hope is this is our big opportunity to really make an impact in our communities across Minnesota, where, dementia and Alzheimer's disease is actually, we have higher rates of that compared to our neighboring states. Secondary impact I'd like to really kind of discuss is in my realm of teaching. I teach advanced human physiology and advanced human pathophysiology for our doctor and nurse practitioner students. And if you kind of talk to them, they would tell you they are 2 extremely hard courses. They may not have the most fun during that time, but I think one of the most rewarding things I see is I have students frequently email me, with a letter of thanks and saying, yeah, I might have not liked it at the time, but now I'm in the field. Now I see why you pushed me and why you made me learn this stuff. So it is a complete joy to be able to work with our student body. They are, such inquisitive and wonderful individuals, and it's something I definitely don't take for granted. So I just once again want to say, thank you to the university, my school, for giving me the opportunity to make an impact in our communities, to our student body. And also, it's important for me, and I know our university and school really puts an emphasis on this, is kind of a work-life balance. So, I'm able to still be a father and still be a partner and still be a coach. And at the end of the day, I know I don't take that for granted, and it puts smiles on my kids' faces. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Spencer.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, President Cunningham, Provost Croson, and Regents, Board of Regents members. Thank you for inviting me to share a little bit about my research here at the University of Minnesota. I was recruited to the Department of Pharmacology and also as part of the medical discovery team on addiction back in 2018. And so as part of that group, my lab uses preclinical models to study substance use disorders. So we primarily work with mice and rats so that we can learn more about what is happening in the brain in association with substance use disorders. So we're really interested in unraveling these mechanisms so that we can start to identify novel pharmacotherapeutic treatments for some of these substance use disorders. So while some SUDs already have treatments like opioid use disorder and alcohol use disorder, although you can, have arguments about the efficacy of some of these pharmacotherapies, there are yet other substance use disorders without any treatments. And so those include cocaine use disorder and cannabis use disorder, which are the 2 main substance use disorders that we study in my lab. And so I'd like to particularly highlight one of the exciting projects that we've done in this sort of pharmacotherapy development realm, which is one where we're looking at the idea of repurposing a type 2 diabetes drug, metformin, as a novel cocaine use disorder therapy. So within our preclinical animal models, we've now, across several different behavioral assays, seen positive signal for metformin in regulating these cocaine-related behaviors behaviors. We've published several papers in this regard, and I'm particularly proud to highlight that these papers have been led by trainees at all levels. So one co-first authored by 2 technicians in the lab, one was led by an undergraduate student, and then one by a graduate student. And also my first graduate student just recently defended her thesis about a week ago. I'm so very proud of that. We've also done some collaborative work in this regard with a colleague of mine that studies alcohol use disorder. And so in her binge drinking model in mice, we see a signal where metformin is also able to reduce binge drinking. So we're really optimistic that this could be a novel therapeutic that is worth advancing perhaps even into clinical trials. And to that end, we're excited to have started more recently some work looking at electronic health records from the University of Minnesota Health System. And this is made possible in part by a pilot grant that we received from the School of Public Health Cannabis Research Center. And so we've started looking into these electronic health records to see if we can see any signal for metformin and being able to regulate substance use disorder outcomes. And so, of course, looking at cannabis because we have this grant from the CRC, but also cocaine and other substance use disorders. So we're really excited that any signal that we see in this study will be able to sort of back translate onto our preclinical models, as well as hopefully provide additional support to move closer to that clinical trial. And so, we're really, although we do, this very basic research, we're really excited by the potential that it has to, sort of translate and make lives better in the state of Minnesota and, beyond. Because, something like metformin, which is this off-patent, widely available, very safe drug, could really reduce barriers to access to substance use disorder treatment, which is something that, we're just very excited about. One other aspect of my time at the University of Minnesota that I'd like to highlight before I yield my time is some of my service work that I've also combined with scholarship. And so I have been a part of the Center for Women in Medicine and Science at UMN, and through that have also been a leader at one point for our recruitment and retention committee. I helped establish an early career faculty mentoring group that remains going to this day, and just being a part of that group and fostering relationships with women across colleges and departments has been very important for me in my time at the University of Minnesota. But again, as I mentioned, it also led to scholarship. So, we were involved in running a survey on faculty experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we've gotten several publications from that data that we collected there. So I think that just highlights kind of the very collaborative nature of the university that I've been so honored to be a part of during my time here. With that, I'll yield my time.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your experiences here. I love that Professor Hill, from the greatest of the Great Lakes, right, to the 10 or 11,000 we have here in Minnesota, to the importance of exercise physiology and getting people to be thinking about how we can do preventive medicine, which is so important, and then your wonderful work with substance use disorder and also faculty mentoring and all. So, and congratulations again to all of you for this award. I'd just like to open it up to questions from the Regents, and we'll start with Tad Johnson, Regent Johnson.
Thank you all for the three of you. That it gives us a glimpse into the future of the University of Minnesota. Dr. Hill, I live in Duluth. I spent a lot of time staring at the waves. I'm glad somebody's thinking about them. But yeah, when I was younger, the lake used to ice over quite a bit. There was a lot of ice piled up on the shore. But briefly, what are the possibilities of producing energy from waves? And I don't know if you could do it briefly, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair Johnson and Regent Johnson, for the question. I like to answer this question, getting you all to visualize. So if you've been to the beach, imagine waves about maybe waist high coming towards you. Every 5 seconds, a wave is crashing up on shore. And if you stretch your arms out, just the amount of energy passing through the width of your arms in those waves would be enough to support about 4 to 5 average Minnesota homes over the course of the day. So if we as engineers and as society can develop technologies to harness even a fraction of that energy, there's an immense amount of power in the waves on the Great Lakes, especially on the oceans. The challenge is, of course, as engineers, how do we do that without impacting the environment? How do we do that without impacting communities and society? And so it really is it's a multidisciplinary challenge, but theoretically, we could support almost every house in America just from power from marine resources.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh. Chair Mayron.
Thank you. First of all, it's so awesome to hear what the three of you have accomplished, and congratulations to you. And it's one of those things, like, I want to just send the video over to the legislature right now to remind them about what we're doing here and how it benefits not only the community, but the state and beyond. It's just incredible. So congratulations. I'm very proud. I do have a quick question for Provost Croson, and that is, on the slide, you talked about the 51% or 52% of the cohort from 2015 to 2017 who have reached tenure. How does that compare with other years? Is that up, down? And what's the status then of the other, basically 50% or 48% who did not?
Chair Johnson, Regent Mayron, thank you for the question, and I would have to phone a friend, Vice Provost Lewis, for specific numbers. I will say these numbers have been consistent since I've been here for the past 5 years, and they are also consistent with our peers. So our other Big Ten universities have kind of similar rates. Some are higher, some are lower. They're different places, but overall, that's kind of a traditional thing. What happens to the folks who leave? And the short answer is different things. We can get you specifics on how many fall into different categories. Some of them, of course, come up for tenure and are not successful. Some of them choose not to come up for tenure for one reason or another. Sometimes they leave for a different university, or sometimes they simply decide that this is not the path for them and that they would rather go into industry or do something else. So there's many other kind of paths that people take. But Vice Provost Lewis, do you have any specifics you want to share?
Chair Aaron, thank you for the question. Yes, exactly what Provost Croson said. There are still, as mentioned in the presentation, there are some that are still on the tenure track that are still here. So it doesn't mean that 48% have left. They maybe had their tenure clock extended or had a longer clock to start with. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you, and I echo the congratulations on achieving tenure. You were hired prior to COVID, and your early new faculty years were COVID years. In just a few words, and as you reflect on those early times of your faculty career, what influence or impact did COVID have on your quest for tenure?
Thank you for the question, Regent Davenport. For me specifically, and talking about this from a research vantage point, since we're delivering interventions in the community, and oftentimes they're supervised, so our students who serve as interventionists, students at the university, they would go to maybe a YMCA that we'd partner with, and the participant would meet them there. That would be obviously a challenge because things are getting shut down. And we actually moved our model, and this is kind of what we're sustaining moving forward, is telerehabilitation. So we would get bikes shipped to their house, and anything that they needed shipped to their house. We would save money actually on the cost of paying for gym memberships through the grant. And just being able to work with some really, I would say, technology fluent and, innovative minds. And some of these were coming from our students when we'd be meeting, how do we navigate this? Actually, for us, I think it was, from a research vantage point, it allowed our studies to be conducted even better because we overcame barriers for activity and exercise. And our adherence rates in these studies went up 10% compared to if our individuals had to go to a gym, transport themselves, or get dropped off by a caregiver. And that's kind of served as the foundation for that AIRP grant and the program grant that I was talking about, because our adherence rates to these interventions have been 85 to 95%, and that's really high in this field. And I think from a research piece, once again, for my team, it was kind of, it required us to think outside the box, but it turned out quite well.
Interesting, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Chair Johnson, Regent Davenport. For a period of time, our lab as a basic research lab was completely shut down, like most of the labs that weren't working directly on COVID-19 research. So for about 3 or 4 months, we couldn't go into the lab at all and do any work. We were able to donate some of our lab supplies that we couldn't use to those labs that were directly doing COVID-19 research. So I would say that, that period of being completely shut down did have an effect on setting us back a little bit, but we maintained kind of virtual contact with each other through Zoom meetings, and the morale of my staff remained high through kind of those check-ins, and we were able to get back on track, I think, pretty smoothly.
Thank you.
Niels?
Yeah, I think just briefly, it required every single faculty at the university to innovate in teaching, and a lot of good things did come out of that. And a lot of those innovative teaching methodologies still exist today and are still being carried forward. For my work in research, sensing the marine environment, I think it really emphasized the need for moving into smart sensing and smart environments. How can we do this remotely? How can we do it reliably? And so I think a lot of innovation was forced to come out of that. And I think every faculty here at the university adapted as they needed to and very well to that scenario. So.
Excellent.
Thank you.
President Cunningham?
Yeah, I just wanted first to give my congratulations to our faculty and to all of our faculty who achieved tenure. Is obviously a tremendous amount of work, especially during the time that was COVID. So my heartfelt congratulations to you. And then, also a little bit of an echo in the time where we are all thinking about federal funding, and we'll continue to think about federal funding. I'm sure all of your hearts stop a little bit to think about what would happen if all of our federal funding went away. And if we could just reflect what that would have meant for you a couple years ago, that would have meant that the great work you're doing on addiction to save lives of Americans would not happen, and how we're thinking about energy moving forward would not be happening. And the great work that you're doing to help people walk without cramp in their legs would not be happening. Not to mention that also, much of your salaries are funded on these projects, and with that support the advancement and give you the best knowledge to be able to teach our students going forward. And so just that handshake agreement we have with federal funding and with state funding of the Cannabis Center as well, that will help people in our state. And I know you folks know this well, but in the general public, as we think about what it means for federal funding and what that means with universities, what it means is this kind of great work happens, and the students that we're training then to be citizens. Your postdoc, congratulations for having your undergraduates and your techs be on your papers or learning things from this research, which will make us more competitive as a society and a healthier society. And that's what federal funding and the state funding is about. So I just want to highlight that, as well as give my congratulations to your time, and know that we're working quite hard to continue that handshake agreement. Yeah.
I think it's fair I can speak for everyone around this table that we're incredibly proud of you as professors and of all the great work you've done for us. So thank you. Coming up. Our second item is an update on the effects and impacts of federal executive orders on the university's research enterprise. To present this item, we welcome Vice President for Research and Innovation, Shashank Priya, and Director of Cost Analysis, David Hagan. First, President Cunningham, would you like to start us off on this item?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Johnson and members of the board. As I alluded to in that last comment, as a leading public research university, it's critical that we remain accountable for fulfilling our fundamental land-grant mission of research, education, and outreach. And I can't think of a better demonstration of that intertwining capability than the presentation that we just had. We are operating now in a time of tremendous uncertainty and the future of federal funding, which clearly impacts all of our work, our teaching, our outreach, and our ability to deliver and fulfill that mission for the state of Minnesota remains in transition and is unclear. This challenges us all to lead with certainty and decisive action and how we manage through that uncertain time. And as we set this up, I guess I want to just highlight a little bit about what this presentation is and what it is not. It is not a speculation on why we got here or where we're going next. It is simply, I feel, as a fiduciary duty of your president to update you on what the facts are, on what the current funding is and what has been stopped, to provide you with factual information about those grants and give you information how I and the university are managing those in this time. And I would encourage us to keep our conversation within the factual components of what has happened and what we are doing to manage the university, and not move into speculative comments on the prior why and how or future. And so with that, we are daily managing the facts and the transition that is unquestionably happening. And with that, that forces us to make real changes on the ground that affect real budgets and real people. And we are doing that in the nonpartisan way for which we are charged as a university for the state of Minnesota, to be working to make decisions and to move ahead with the information and the funding we have, and then to manage through this time for the optimal effect of the university for our mission and charge for the state of Minnesota. So I just want to kind of set the table in that way, and then know that, of course, as we bring to you budgets and as we bring to you other information, it is our job to bring to you the factual information about what's happening financially and what we are doing to be fiscally responsible to manage this time. And so with that, I'll turn this presentation over. Thank you so much, Vice President Priya.
Thank you, President Cunningham, Chair Johnson, and members of the board. I'm here with David Hagan, who is the Director of Cost Analysis, and together we are going to provide you an update on the federal research funding disruptions and how we are responding to these disruptions. So this slide describes the overarching data on the total number of terminations that we have. As you can see, there's a very troubling trend here that we have different types of disruptions taking place. So first is the terminations, and we have confirmed 79 terminations of a sponsored project as of May 2nd. These are the projects that have been approved, funded, and were already underway when the awards were terminated. But this is not the full story. There are other types of terminations, such as the stop work orders, which means that we are told to immediately halt the research activities and the payments are suspended on these awards. Cases where awards were approved and selected for funding, but never issued the award. due to sudden changes in the agency direction or funding freezes. And there are something also called partial terminations, where only one specific component of a project, often those tied to diversity, gender equity, or other international collaborations, are canceled. And so we work through these awards in order to try to revise the certain sections of the proposal and try to refund these awards. We also have some awards where contracting language was a challenge, and there are about roughly 11 NIH awards where the older language was being utilized, and we have submitted a revised language for the agency to consider, but it's taking a long time for them to issue these awards, so it's also in a holding pattern. And so you can just see from this one slide that there are multiple layers of disruptions and destabilization taking place. We react on the terminations wherever it's possible to file the appeal, but unfortunately, the response from agency is highly delayed, and sometimes we never receive a response. On this slide, we just describe the data as a function of different agencies from which we have received these orders. So as you can see here, most of the impacted funders are from NIH, NSF, and USDA, some of our very large partners in the federal research. Also notable are these non-federal organizations responding to federal executive orders who have begun to withdraw the sub-awards that are given to our institution. So some examples by units here. College of Medicine has about 15 terminations, 12 from NIH, 2 from CDC, 1 from HHS. School of Public Health has about 8 terminations. CEHD has 7 terminations. CSC has 7 terminations. So these are some examples of large disruptions in the colleges taking place. On this next slide, we describe some of the common reasons that are provided to us when we receive these termination orders or stop work orders. The most common ones are including DEI and gender-related activities, defunding certain agency. For example, USAID is an example where a lot of programs were just completely cut, and other areas such as climate and vaccine research. Alarmingly, some of the projects that have been canceled, there's no reason at all, which is provided in these termination orders. On this slide, we provide some examples of affected research. The first one is NIH-funded project on Alzheimer's disease and diabetes study. This was a sub-award to us from George Washington University. Unfortunately, there's no reason. This program was just canceled. The next example is called TICTAC, the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center program. This program assists communities with energy, water, and natural resources projects across a 6-state region of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and 37 federally recognized tribal nations. These programs provide assistance to these communities in helping them navigate the federal grant opportunities and trying to assist them with setting up the grant and executing those grants. Unfortunately, this grant was canceled early on. The total original award was about $8 million with roughly $6 million unexpended. And we have been trying to communicate with the PI and the community in order to find the pathway to get this restarted. The third example here is from NRI in Duluth, Green Iron Project. This is a project titled as Midwest Industrial Transformation Initiative, MITI. It has substantial backing from Minnesota's industry and also the state government and agencies. The goal of the MITI project is to become almost a national and global model for transforming 4 of our critical industries: iron and steel, cement, concrete, ammonia and fertilizer industry, and liquid fuels. And it does so by making new innovations in the processes to make them much more cost-effective and much more sustainable. The reason this example is here is because DOE basically halted the negotiation on these awards, and it's been pending, even though it was almost in an approved category before the negotiations were halted. So the next slide summarizes a summary of the impacts so far as of about 2 weeks ago. 72 total grants terminated, and this number we update almost every week, but the data lagging on this slide is mostly related to the personnel, and that's why we are showing you 2-week older data, because we have much more concrete information on personnel impact. So as of 2 weeks ago, 220 personnel connected to these 72 awards were affected, and the total dollar amount impact is about $22.3 million. Financially, the impact doesn't stop in FY25. We are projecting that these costs associated with terminations will extend all the way up to FY29, with cascading effects year and over year. And this is only a snapshot of disruptions, because almost every day we receive some kind of order from a different agency. I'd also like to point out that an additional $4.9 million in uncommitted out-year funds will also be lost because of the pending stop orders, and that may bring our total to over $27 million. This next slide data is very interesting and actually provides a very, very good comparative analysis of what is happening over this last 3 to 4 months. So if you look at the data below for February and April and compare fiscal year 24 and 25 numbers, we see almost a difference of $25 million, almost a 22% decline in the awards over this last 3 months. And so this is basically, and these awards, as we all know, are multiple year awards, so the impact of these will be felt over the next 3 or 4 years. There's not only delay in getting the awards, or the awards are not being issued, but programs are being canceled. So there's another problem that may have submitted a proposal, but unfortunately there may be no money allocated for that proposal. And this is very much obvious in NIH, where study sections have provided the score, but there's no decision made on those scores. So what has been our response so far? So thanks to President Cunningham and her team, we have multi-pronged response and very, very systematic way of approaching this. First, she has set up a rapid response task force, which comprises of unit leaders from multiple different units, finance, OGC, provost office, HR, research office, UMC, so many different offices, and we invite the leaders as needed from different units to come and join us in the discussion. This group meets very regularly. There's also another group which is much broader that Provost Croson hosts, which comprises of deans and other unit leaders, which also meets very regularly. And we have a lot of discussions about all different aspects of these disruptions, financial, personnel, and so on. We also are very highly engaged in scenario planning, so just imagining different types of scenarios that may emerge from the trends that we are seeing in the awards and the proposal submissions and issues on these awards. And we are reacting theoretically in the background to be ready for what could be anticipated if X happens or Y happens. We're also very aggressively involved in describing our stories and telling factual information to different organizations such as AAU, APLU, ACE, AMC, etc., and so that they are very much aware of the challenges that the institution is facing. Also with our peer institutions through Big Ten and other places, we meet almost on a weekly basis over virtual call. I think Provost Group, Finance Group, like EVFO, Goldman, and so on. So we are all trying to share the best practices that we are developing, but also trying to share our stories so that people can bring them up to the higher level. And I think these organizations are doing a good job in reacting in a very timely manner to provide some assistance. There's also a lot of focus on internal communication. So there are multiple levels of communication. So there's Chris Gare and his team are coordinating an institution-wide communication. Our office sends out a lot of communications related to research grants and different types of notices that we receive from NIH and other places. There's also a lot of communications which goes out of the sponsored program administration. So David and April Kuhn send out every time there's a new executive order or there's a new agency notice that comes out, and they explain to our PIs that this is the implication that this will have on your research. But we are trying to be very forthcoming in communicating so that people are very much aware of what is happening and how we are trying to address that issue internally. Yeah. On this slide, we provide some of the remedies that we have been working on in the background, and some things are known and some things are unknown because we have to work individually with each PI in order to file the appeal. Sometimes PIs don't want to be sharing that information, and so we respect that, and so we just work with that PI and the agency program manager or the administrator at the agency and file the appeals and basically not describe it to anyone. But there are some appeals which actually PIs are very happy to share with everyone to tell their story more broadly, and so these are the examples we cite on our website and in our communication. So in addition to filing the appeals, which is a very regular process ongoing, as soon as we receive a notice, we start this conversation with the individual PI and the department chair or associate dean of research in that college, and then develop our action plan. At the same time, we also have very broad engagement, as I said, with the organizations, nonprofit organizations, and we coordinate if they are trying to file something at the federal level. We sometimes become engaged in these filings and provide information that they need in order to show the impacts that the institution will have. But at the same time, we also are trying to take advantage of different types of national level TROs and injunctions that are being released. So not being a party to these things, but being a supporter in the background, and when these events occur, we take advantage of them in order to go back to the agency and cite these injunction and cite these TRO and try to reinstate our award. And we have actually been very successful in reinstating quite a bit of number of our awards. But yesterday was actually a much more exciting announcement from the university. So again, thanks to President Cunningham, her leadership, and many of my colleagues here in the room, Provost Croson and Greg Goldman and many others here in the room, that we were able to announce a program called RACE, Researcher Assistant Initiative for Supporting Emergencies. This is a one-time emergency funding mechanism designed for researchers whose projects have been terminated, so the number 72 or more that I showed you. And it prioritizes people who have direct personal impact. So these could be students or postdocs or research staff, and they are basically in risk of losing their continuity in the project or employment. There may be some critical projects which have human subjects enrollment or critical data that needs to be preserved. Sometime an experiment cannot be stopped in the middle, and you have to really continue because of the type of chemistry or physics involved, etc. So we prioritize these projects, and hopefully, as a function of time, we will be able to address many of these terminated and disrupted awards. But this was a very exciting achievements, and thanks to the ADRs and many deans who actually contributed a lot of ideas in development of this project. So we appreciate this very nice team effort that took place over the last couple of weeks. So in closing, we remain a research powerhouse. We continue to find ways to connect our researchers to different types of sponsoring opportunities. And actually, I want to take this moment to thank many of my corporate partners, a lot of them locally in the Twin Cities region, who have been reaching out and actually trying to increase the involvement in the university. provide more support and funding for creating new type of seed programs. So really appreciate their partnerships. Also thanks to a lot of nonprofit foundations who have actually stepped up and also contributed in either continuing the ongoing program or providing some support. So we continue this effort in the background to ensure that our researchers have networking opportunity and also have connectivity to different other funding resources that can be made available to them. We are also very actively advocating about the federal investment, both with our legislature in the state and at the federal level, so that they are aware of the impacts. And then also trying to come up with different kinds of strategies so that we can address the appeals process, the filing of different kinds of notices that we need to react to, and engaging with our PIs in the community to keep the momentum high, not let the disruptions become mentally frustrating for them that they can stop working. But yeah, just be a very good team player and a good supportive team player for them in this time. So with that, I'll stop and we'll be glad to take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. President Cunningham.
Yeah, before we kick off the discussion, first of all, thank you so much. And, you know, I have to kick this off by saying, I mean, first of all, the board and folks can understand how this is sort of the first weeks of COVID for us, these first 8 weeks of just understanding what's going on and adapting, and is a big crisis management challenge for our team. We've instituted entirely new procedures. When he says that we have a rapid response team, it is meeting early in the morning and late at night. It is meeting multiple times a week. We have massive amounts of communications to do across the university and to our partners. You know, that 79 grants is well up to into the 80s, and the team, that's additional individual conversations with agencies every single day. This is a huge amount of workload of management of the transition of this time for all parts of the executive team. And first of all, I just want to express my deep gratitude to the team for managing this, which is easily an extra 30 to 40% of their current workload in addition to all of their regular work. And they are very committed, you know, to this with the community. So that's first thing. I mean, the second thing to highlight is we are not unique or alone. There have been thousands of grants stopped across the country. There have been entire agencies such as USAID, entire programs that have been stopped. And what we are seeing here and what we are managing here is how those trickle to our university and what happens when that stop happens, and then how we manage them internally. I am very grateful, and the team put together basically an entire response program of RAISE in a very short amount of time, working with deans. I just can't be clear enough, however, there is no mitigation for the loss of federal funding, and this will not begin to replace the federal funding that we lost. What this is trying to do is to take, if we can picture the 3 fabulous faculty that were here before and picture them in year 2 of their work, with a lab open and mice on the table, and having received a 30-day stop work order, how do we help them respectfully wind down their experiments, potentially get that postdoc through the end of their year of time, but by no means will it be able to fund those projects or the projects that have stopped for the full extent of the work that they will do during that time. There is no replacement for that, although we appreciate the I appreciate VP Goldman and our executive team are putting together some small emergency funds. But again, those are really to respectfully help our most vulnerable faculty and staff wind down respectfully, or maybe get like a first paper or close out their mice project respectfully with respect to the animals and other things, right? In looking ahead, it has, when we're talking about scenario planning, and VP Priya could give the exact numbers, but right now in budgets that are being proposed going forward, there are proposed cuts to the NIH budget of 40%.
NIH is about $18 billion, so that'll be almost 58% or something.
Now, those are not final national budgets. These are in play. There are cuts to the NSF proposed of about
Yeah, from $9 billion to $4 billion.
right, about 50%. So what we need to do as a university, again, this is not a political statement and it has no feelings associated with this. It's a financial statement. We have to start modeling what happens if we have half the research funding next year and half the amount of indirect funding that comes with that next year. And maybe more than half because the indirect rates are changing. So from a business model, we have modeling to do, and we have to adapt to whatever the environment is. And we have brilliant scholars and a fabulous executive team, and we will adapt. We may look different on the other side of that, and the research we're doing may look different on the other side of that, but we will emerge from this transition time. But this is the work the team is doing right now. And so, when I make a comment this morning in the earlier session of this is not, when we're talking about budgets and lovely things and end of year budgets and state budgets, this is a different time that we're in. And it has to do with the uncertainty also of we have $800 million a year of federal grants in the past year. You heard the projected budgets for next year and the Stop Work Awards. What will we have next year? I can't tell you. And that will have tremendous uncertainty in our budgets. There are real people associated with these grants, as we've noted. We are trying to be respectful to them in this emergency fund. Some of those folks will be moved on to other projects. Some will do more teaching because they will have less research, and some will not have jobs anymore because we don't have funding for them anymore. And this is true across the board. So again, without political statements or comments on why or how, we have a business problem to manage, and we are working on managing that business problem while focusing on supporting our people, trying to respect our researchers who've worked years to get these projects, and how we're going to then manage through this time to be a great university and a great service to the state going forward. So with that, I think, I and the team would be happy to take questions around sort of the business management of this. I think we have, other sessions where there are, other components with OJC Peterson, et cetera, but around sort of the business or how we're managing this right now or what it means in that regard, I think we'd be happy to take those questions now.
Sure, thank you. We have a list of people wanting to ask questions. So thank you very much for setting that stage. Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you, Vice President Priya. And I wanted to express my appreciation, too, for all the attentiveness that you've had, and include you in that, President Cunningham. And the communication, not just to the board, but to the broader community, university community, and public appreciation for that. My question is very basic financial question. A lot of federal funding comes through reimbursement for past expenditures. Is that the case for much of this here? And if so, what are our expectations for that to be, the repayments be forthcoming?
You want to take this? Yeah.
Sure. Most of our awards are cost reimbursement awards, so we get reimbursed on a daily, weekly, whatever our sponsored financial reporting does the draw against that award. So these awards that have been terminated, I don't work in that area. I believe we have essentially no more expenses that can be drawn as of the date it's terminated. I might be incorrect on that. There might be a 30-day window where we're allowed to continue drawing expenses. But at one point, the funding is just cut off. We don't get to draw against those anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Regent Tad Johnson.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation, Vice President Priya. Just a clarification on the NRRI Green Iron Award, the negotiations were suspended. Does that mean there's a possibility the negotiations might be reactivated?
Yes, so Chair Johnson and Regent Johnson, yes, actually spoke with Rolf yesterday evening, and yeah, he's very hopeful that the partnership that we have with NREL, so National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado Boulder, through this partnership, I think we'll be able to engage the Department of Energy to continue conversation with us on this topic.
Thank you.
Regent Mayron.
Thank you. Thank you for this sobering presentation. We all knew it was coming, and And I appreciate the facts you provided with us and how it's changing minute by minute, day by day. I have a specific question and a more general one. The specific question has to do with when you talk about remedies and the appeals process. First, could you give a little bit of an overview of what an appeal looks like, who it goes to, what that process entails? And the more specific question as to that is, why are some principal investigators not interested in participating? Why wouldn't they want to appeal to see if they can change people's minds on this? That's a more specific question. The more general has to do with your closing reflections, where you talk about support is needed from the board. You have 3 bullet points, and my question is, what would that support look like from us? What can we do as a board to help support all that you are doing to deal with this uncertain times?
Shishak, I'll maybe take the last of those questions if you want to take the appeal question.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So, Chair Johnson and Regent Meron, so the appeal has to be based on certain factual data that the reason that you use in your termination order or stop order is not valid because of these policies or regulations that exist. These could be agency-specific policies or regulations. For example, National Science Foundation, when they recently capped, they basically started to send cancellations in bulk, like a group of grants. And so there was no reason given except saying that they no longer comply with the established agency policy. And they changed that agency policy 24 hours before, and they posted it on their website. But we felt there's a whole process that was ignored. So you basically identify these differences, and then we work very closely with our Office of General Counsel, and OGC has been amazing, and the staff there have been amazing in coming up with the arguments that we need to present. And then so the appeal letter basically looks like our analysis of why the reasons that you have given in your stop order or termination order is not valid because of these established regulations and policies. And so sometimes they will send us immediately a response that we have received it, and it will take 180 days to get back to you, which is 6 months. And for a person on the grant, if you have stopped the payment, then how do you survive for 6 months while you are waiting for this? That's why I think this raised grant will be effective. Sometimes they don't respond again. We just filed an appeal and nothing comes. And we feel one of the reasons for that may be because staff in the agencies are also being terminated. So maybe there's nobody to work on so many appeals from all over the country that are being filed and so on. The second about PI not willing to disclose, I think it's just sometimes there's just this resistance that what if my name goes out and it may affect me later on in future during the review process or something like this. So and I can understand that concern that you may be a little bit fearful about what could be the impact of this on the future proposals or grants and so on.
Just a quick follow-up. Are these principal investigators who are employees of the university, or are we talking about, where we have a sub-award from Washington?
No.
And the principal investigator from another university is saying, I'm not going to do the appeal.
So Chair Johnson and Regent Meron, it's mostly our PIs that we interact with. So we don't call the PIs at other institutions from our office. I mean, PIs can talk to each other, but we don't call them.
It's ours.
So,
Okay.
yeah. And so with that, I'll pass it on to President Cunningham.
Yeah, and I would say that's a small amount. Overwhelmingly, our PIs would like us to appeal, and we are going through what are routine processes, which may not have an endpoint on them, but we are following the proper agency procedures that are in place to discuss the endings of awards and such. So I think that's a small amount. I think I want to highlight two different pieces. One, on your question on what can the board do. I mean, one, I think the board needs to be fully understanding of the budget times that we are in right now. We'll have later conversations about tuition. We'll have later conversations about workforce reinvestment. We'll have later conversations about strategic investments and things, but we have to understand also the budget uncertainty that we're managing in this time and understand that. And I think in general, it is a time for everyone in higher education and who wants the country to be competitive and to be healthy, to recognize the partnership that federal research has and to be advocating for the importance of federal research in maintaining our national competitiveness and what we can do for the economic impact and value for the state. And so I think that's the kind of discussions that are helpful for the board to be fully apprised of. I want to just also raise that the news is confusing right now, and there are many different things happening across universities. These issues with grants are not the same issues that our colleagues at Harvard or Brown or Northwestern have had, where their entire portfolio of funding has been stopped. They are not drawing down any funds on any grants at all. That's entirely different than what this is. Yeah. This is so there's multiple things going on at once. This is a reflection of science agencies are changing their priorities and changing their processes on a rapid timescale. And with that, they have new agency priorities and are working on how they spend their money differently. And they are in a transition time of that, are deciding to not fund things that they funded before. And then as I meet with national leaders of these agencies, I was in DC last week, they are then formulating what their priorities will be going forward and how they want to fund those. And do they want to fund them in the same way they happened before, or will they fund them with other mechanisms? And then that will at some point emerge. And so we're in this in-between limbo time land where we need to sort out sort of the prior and the future and try to be prepared for a future for which our faculty in the university can be very successful while managing the transition time of a radically fast change in current funding. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Regent Wheeler.
Yeah, I think you've gotten some of my questions answered. First of all, thank you so much. I mean, this is obviously critical to our mission of the university, and so this work on your behalf and what you're scrambling to try to do to actually preserve as much as we can is meaningful. I think in terms of advocacy as a board and when we talk to elected officials, what we've just seen today is really helpful from my perspective, understanding, to your point, President Cunningham, what actually is being affected, and also having the stories. I mean, of energy use from water, of prevention of Alzheimer's, of looking at substance uses, or just having those stories of what this is actually meaning in human and environmental terms is helpful as well. I guess my question, and you started to see this, is, because a lot of people are in similar and some in different positions, what is the potential for working with others to look at how others are responding and what we might learn from them collectively and or a collective response to these things? So I'm addressing that to President Cunningham.
And some of that I can address now, and some of that I'll push to a different time. But at a very high level, Regent Wheeler, as Vice President Priya noticed, we are all working with our colleagues across universities all the time. I spent 2 days last week at the AAU meeting with 60 other presidents across universities. We are all learning from each other, understanding how many grants they are managing, in what areas they are happening, and how they are managing to manage that business transition at their institution. I am meeting regularly with the Big Ten presidents. This group is meeting also across all of those groups. There are times which we're working in coordination, for example, with the AAU, and I can get into that a little bit differently, but we have been part of collective action and legal action that has been put forth by the AAU on behalf of their members. So that's the kinds of things that that we are doing that are practical, and we're looking for ways to manage this rapidly changing time.
And much appreciated, and it's wasn't lost that 30 to 40% of already 200% jobs are being spent in this regard. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
our teams are really working hard, and I really want us to understand that in a big way.
Thank you, Chair Johnson.
Johnson and Regent Wheeler. Actually, during this time, this group, SRO group, and President Cunningham knows these SRO groups around the country, we have almost a listserv where we almost post questions every day 5 times, because anyone who has any doubt about, hey, I've received this, what can I do about this? And then immediately people will start chiming and telling that, okay, I also received this, and this is what I did, or this is the things that my institution developed in order to file the appeal. So I want to take this time actually to thank this whole SRO group around the AU institutions, that they have been really, really supportive and sharing the information with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Priya.
Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thanks for the presentation. Lower amount of research is going to result in a lower amount of economic development, which is going to result in a lower amount of taxes. And solving these grand challenges really contributes to the economy in a big way. And so I'm sad to see that go away. I think President Cunningham answered my first question about, has the federal government pivoted to other areas yet? And have you heard of any increase of funding to any universities on the pivot? That was my first question, I guess.
I can take a little bit of that. I think the pivot is yet to come. I mean, what the national science leaders have been expressing is an interest and desire for the country to remain competitive scientifically. I certainly have heard, I think, focus from national leaders around AI and health, around the National Institute of Health director is expressing a lot of content around chronic disease. There's certainly topics that are being aimed at, and we're in good connection with those. We're listening closely to those signals so that we can understand where we have strengths and where we might move ahead in those areas. So I think those signals are coming out. It's still just been just over 100 days. So the mechanisms for that are not necessarily in place. NSF, for example, last Friday paused all funding of new grants. We have almost $100 million a year in NSF funding. We imagine now, we don't know what their eventual budget will be, but they will at some point start issuing grants again, perhaps towards different priorities, perhaps towards more focused priorities, perhaps by different mechanisms. And when that happens, we're looking and in good touch with the science community nationally to try to understand what those priorities will be, and so that we can be best aligned with the future of what those funding opportunities are. Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
just a quick question. Based on our earlier discussion on tenure, does this change the tenure track timeline for?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Chair Johnson, Regent Hipsch, that is a topic of much discussion, as you might imagine, among my team and among the deans. We already have a process by which your probationary period can be extended.
Yeah.
And while we applied that broadly, we're applying that liberally but more selectively. So there is a form that a researcher would fill out that says, I need extra time. And typically that had been used for things like, childbearing, but also for things like my lab equipment didn't arrive, or my postdoc was delayed, or something else. So we are now, actively soliciting those requests, particularly for faculty who are in their probationary period, whose grants were stopped or delayed or for some other reason. The other initiative we have going on is identifying what the tenure criteria are. That's something that's held in each department. and encouraging departments to relook at those criteria, because if your criteria, for example, requires an external federal grant, perhaps that is not going to be a reasonable criteria for the next 3 to 5 years. Those criteria get revised on a regular basis anyway within each unit, but this is a real opportunity to take a look at those in an expedited way.
Good. Thank you for that. I knew you were on it, so thank you.
Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I heard you mention, briefly mention that the private industry is starting to come forward and help. And I also appreciate the fact that there's no way that they can totally, replace the funding. But I mean, in my very simplistic view of research, we are the ones at all the universities that come up with the original concepts that then translate into what private industries, take off from to make products and to generate their profits. So first of all, to the general private industry, thank you for your help so far. But what various things, what are we doing concrete to be, do you have a whole little subcommittee that approaches the private industry and keeping them abreast of the situation, et cetera? Because if we fall, they fall.
Yeah. So Chair Johnson and Regent Turner, this is the, as you said, this is almost a loss for them too, because federal funding, as you said, provides that foundation that you explore a lot of basic questions. Many of them were just curiosity-driven questions, which will lead to some nice answers in 3 to 5 years after the student or postdoc has done quite a bit of work on them. Some will not, but even the failed experiments is the data that you need in order to advance yourself. So the industry has always relied on these outcomes in order to develop their own hypothesis of what they want to explore further. And this has been a very engaging process between us and industry all the time, that we present these data and these findings to them on a regular basis to keep them informed through mutual meetings or through workshops or through conferences. But they are aware that these are the advancements that are taking place. And then they develop their own concept after they watch that these things were conducted. And this aligns with their interests. So as you have very rightly pointed out, this is a loss for them too, and they are probably concerned that this will actually affect their own development process of new products or improving the quality of existing products because there's a lesser information available now. So what we are doing now is, actually, as I said, there's a lot of interest now for them to find out how they can keep supporting these very talented students and postdocs that we have. This is the workforce that they rely on. We bring a lot of great people from both nationally and internationally to come here and work with us for multiple years, and they, in that time, develop these relationships through networking or poster sessions and so on. So this is a very reliable workforce that our companies engage with. And so they would love for that workforce to be available to keep advancing their own enterprise. And so they are stepping forward to support the research, but also support the people involved and keep that pipeline open for them.
And if I may, Chair Regent Turner, and while I appreciate there will be a little bit of extra funding, I just want to be really clear. Industry will not be able to fill the gap that we have or that the federal government has had, and because their priorities are different. They work on after the science has been developed and how it rolls out. They depend on this very foundational work that the NSF or NIH does that can sometimes take 10 or 15 years of science work to develop before it is ready for any pre-industry work or rollout. So yes, we will look for more diversified portfolio and more industry, but I appreciate the optimism, but that will be a small fraction. We will not replace our funding with industry funding. It's not possible. So,
thank you. I see there are no more formal questions. I know we all have a lot of questions we're thinking about. Thank you so much, Vice President Priya, Director Hagan, for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Next, we'll continue our series of topics providing enrollment updates and highlighting enrollment strategies for each campus. Today's presentation will focus on the Duluth campus. To provide the update are Chancellor Charles Nees and Vice Chancellor for Strategic Enrollment Management, Trevor Eagle. And when you're settled, Chancellor Nees, would you like to start us off, please?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chair Johnson. Good morning, Regents. Excited to share with you the update about the strategic enrollment management at the University of Minnesota Duluth. First off, just wanted to start by saying one of the pieces that I've done in my 10 months now on the job and in my role is recognizing the important role that our strategic enrollment means for the university. And so what we have done is we've kind of elevated that strategic enrollment unit at the university, and we were super excited that we already had on staff a wonderfully talented and innovative leader that we have moved into a vice chancellor role as we've created a whole new unit at the university that is focused on strategic enrollment management that includes not only what we are doing to admit and bring new students to the institution, but is looking strategically at what we are doing around our retention strategies to make sure that we are supporting the students that we bring to our institution. And so as we talk about strategic enrollment management, know that it is kind of both the admissions process and bringing those new scholars to our campus, but also thinking about what are we doing to retain the scholars that we have brought to the institution and supporting them in their successes as they move forward. I want to share, I come from a bit of a teaching educational background, and one of the things that you always do in class is you make sure you lay out the learning outcomes for the day. And so I couldn't start a presentation without letting you know what our goals are, what we hope to accomplish as part of our learning strategy for this time. We want to share with you a little bit of an update of our current student population and what's going on with our current enrollment, as well as give you a landscape, if you will, around the market realities that we are facing as a university, and what are some of those risks that we are thinking about as we consider the strategies that we will be using. We're going to share with you some of the strategies that are in motion, but also some of the things that we are looking forward to in our priorities as we get ready to think about the fall of 2025 and the class that we are bringing in at this time. On our next slide, we've got a bit of an opportunity to share with you kind of what that kind of new student profile looks like. So this isn't our total enrollments, but this is really looking at the new student population that we've brought in. Because part of that enrollment management, as I said, is thinking about continuing students and how we support them all the way through. And so as you can see, we had a bit of a drop in that new student class, which means that that group is with us, that smaller cohort is with us for over that course of 4 years as we support their successes in graduation, but it also means that we have that overall fluctuation that hits. And so one of the big pieces that we've really focused on is how do we start to stabilize that size of the incoming new students in a way that will allow us to be a lot more predictive around our overall enrollment. And so that's been a really important piece as we look at that overall target of hitting a goal of getting back up to our total enrollment of around 10,000 students, which would include about 8,500 undergraduate students and then over 1,000 graduate students, as well as we also included in our enrollment counts the students that are on the campus but are affiliated with the School of Pharmacy and the medical school. And so looking at all of that as we go across the total time. Our current enrollment, for those of you, just to give you a quick update, is 9,253. And so that is where we are looking at how we can continue to move forward. And so we're really excited about some of the things that we have done this cycle to help stabilize that enrollment, as well as we look at some of those challenges that are coming up so we can continue this upward trend. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Trevor now to give you some insights around some of those successes and the challenges that we are facing moving forward.
Thank you, Chancellor. So I'm going to talk about our successes from this past cycle in fall 2024. First, we had record high applications. the highest in UMD's history, and this is evidence that demand is growing. We've also had a return of strong transfer enrollments. This was also the most in the past 3 years. We've also had greater diversity. Largest increase in BIPOC student enrollment since 2017, and we've enrolled more first-generation, international, and out-of-state students. We're seeing more geographic diversity as well, especially across the Midwest. Talking a little bit about the challenges looking ahead, yield remains a hurdle. More students are finding us and applying, but we haven't fully solved the conversion from admitted to enrolled. We're potentially starting to move the needle on this for the fall 25 class. We also know that there's demographic shifts that are happening. Minnesota is ranked 19th in the country for college going on rates, and both Minnesota and Wisconsin are seeing declines in high school graduates. Also, both states have a high concentration of strong regional comprehensive universities, and competition is strong. Affordability perception. Competitors in Minnesota and Wisconsin list lower tuition prices. However, UMD is often more affordable on net price for aid recipients, something we need to keep communicating better. Strategic implications. We need to protect and grow our market share of Minnesota high school grads. We need to continue breaking into new regions, and we need to keep supporting efforts that expand access statewide and increase college continuation rates. Here, we get to clarify a common misconception and something I talked about on the previous slide. Even though our listed price is sometimes higher, UMD outperforms many peers in terms of net price. This is the price that students actually pay. This is especially true for students who receive aid. This chart shows how well UMD and the University of Minnesota system overall fares on affordability once financial aid is factored in. This is a competitive strength and one we need to amplify in our messaging to students and families even more. Affordability and access, they go hand in hand. One of the messages we have just recently amplified is about how the Carnegie classification of institutions of higher education recognized UMD as an opportunity university that exemplifies high access and high career earnings of our graduates. UMD was the only public university in Minnesota with this specific distinction. Next, we're going to talk about 4 strategic levers we believe will significantly influence enrollment. First, marketing. We've made significant updates this year that align with our new brand. As you see on this slide, we've revamped materials that better showcase our logo, our location, and other differentiating aspects of the UMD experience. We're also leaning more into authentic storytelling, directly from current students, alumni, and faculty, engaging with our prospective populations. This helps bring our community to life. We've also made increased digital investments to broaden our reach on platforms that students frequent, and we've refreshed our print and mailed collateral that reflects who we are today, why this matters. Students consistently cite our location and campus setting as top reasons for enrolling. This confirms that our messaging and how we show up in the market must lean into these differentiators. Now I'm going to pass it over to the Chancellor.
Fantastic. I think part of what we are also looking at is how do we use data to help inform some of our strategies and some of our decisions. And so a big part of what Trevor and his team are doing is really going over this information and trying to understand what makes sense for us moving forward. And this chart shows most of our competition comes from the larger national universities, particularly competing with schools in Wisconsin, in North Dakota, as well as down into Iowa. Obviously, a big overlap with the Twin Cities campus. We're just happy they're going to the University of Minnesota. So we're excited about that, and they're in maroon and gold. But we're recognizing that there are ways that we need to think about and use some of the strategies that we might have at our disposal to help with, as Trevor mentioned, that yield. So the students that we've admitted who actually then show up on move-in day. and enroll in our classes. And some of what we've learned as we've interviewed and collected information from our students is that they're really interested in coming to the university because of our campus surroundings. And that space that we have connected to those outdoor spaces. We're trying to convert them from a place where they might vacation to a place where they might get their education. And how do they look at both of that as that opportunity for them to come and be a part of it? We're really trying to also lead into that mid-sized university experience that we provide with that hands-on applied knowledge environment that is really a part of the UMD overall experience that includes undergraduate research and includes some of those engaged high-impact practices that our students are able to do, whether it's an internship, study abroad, our research experiences that we provide. And so how does that small, mid-sized university environment allow for that interaction and high-frequency interaction with our faculty? As well, we're leaning into some of the unique academic programs that we have to offer. We've got a wonderful degree program that has combined the arts of graphic design and the marketing strategy of business into a graphic design marketing major. One of the only in the country, as well as one of the very few programs in the country that have environmental and outdoor education. And so leaning into some of these distinct programs that we have that also take part of that larger area that we situated in. We're also looking at the fact that a lot of our undergraduates come from the Twin Cities area, and how do we rethink about that market and really connect with that market. And so right here in this building this spring, we had a very large admitted student celebration where we invited all of the local students that were admitted to the University of Minnesota Duluth to come and spend a day here in McNamara. And we brought most of the campus here. So they had a chance to really experience what it was like, along with a lot of our undergraduate scholars, as well as alumni who came in and told the story. And so we're really leaning into that. We also launched a new experience this year as well with all of our confirmed students, where we sent them yard signs to put into their front yards to say, I'm going to UMD, and an opportunity for us to now have yard signs across Minneapolis, St. Paul area that feature the bulldog and the pride that they have in going to our institution. And so we're really super excited about that. As Trevor mentioned, we also have seen an increase in transfer students and coming back to our commitment to supporting that transfer pathway and really partnering strongly with Minnesota North Community College system, which is where we see a lot of our transfer students coming, particularly in our engineering program, as well as increased partnerships with Lake Superior Community College right in our own backyard. And so that's become a big priority for us. And then we're looking at how we might expand into some new regions, including, as Trevor mentioned, looking at some more of the regional area across the Midwest and how we can really market and talk about the opportunities that exist at Duluth for that population. Turning back over to Trevor to talk more about some of those strategies that we're looking at in improving that overall message to our students.
The third lever is improving experiences. These are all the touch points that shape how students and families feel throughout the journey with us. We've been working to elevate all of these moments. As you just heard the Chancellor talk about, campus visits, campus events have been elevated. We have a new Welcome Center presentation. We have stronger tour routes, and we have more engagement with current students, faculty, and alumni, meeting the prospective students and families. Orientation. In-person registration is back. We've designed new interest-based excursions to help new students build community and connections earlier on. We know this helps with belonging. Yield campaigns. We've introduced new authentic video messages from students and faculty in their own voice, talking about what makes UMD so great. And this has developed also targeted outreach to students who are drawn to UMD's medium size, as well as our outdoor setting. This is about creating connections and reinforcing UMD's distinctiveness. I'm going to hand it back to the Chancellor.
Fantastic. And then part of what is also really important for us to do as an institution is think about how we are aligning our academic programs with the workforce needs, as well as the interests that high school graduates are wanting and coming to an institution or place like our university. Our interim executive vice chancellor and provost has really been leading great conversations on the campus around our academic program alignment and how we can make sure that we are offering the programs that matter and make a difference from a workforce development, at the same time are also driving some interest to the institution because of what we're doing. So that is great work that our faculty have been wonderful partners with us on. But it means that we are probably looking at some of those academic programs that we might put on hold for a little bit, as we also look at that and strengthening and adding other programs that might support some of that workforce development. You heard Dr. Hill earlier today talk about marine engineering. And that is one of the areas that we are hoping by the fall of 26 that we'll offer a degree program in marine engineering. In fact, this summer I'm planning on traveling to the University of Kiel in Germany. We're looking at doing a joint program with the University of Kiel that would focus on this marine engineering, because Kiel, if you know, also sits in a major waterway right between the North and Baltic Seas. And what can we do in a partnership as we think about marine engineering and all of those wonderful research opportunities that Dr. Hill highlighted that we can bring to the University of Minnesota Duluth. We're also looking at neurorobotics and the opportunity to partner with the med school that is on the campus and thinking about the intersection of computer science and robotics with some of the medical technology and the opportunities to really lean into that experience that we can create right at University of Minnesota Duluth in partnership with the med school that is on the campus. So some of those creative programs are ways that we're also looking at attracting more student enrollments. At the same time, really leaning into some of the learning environments that we create and that complete student experience. That includes the on-campus housing, it includes the hands-on research knowledge. You heard a little bit about the group of students that are going to Morocco this weekend and bringing their research opportunities. That's all part of an honors program. In fact, the photo in the slide is that group of students getting ready to understand the role of research as they travel to Morocco this summer. We're also trying to make sure that we are creating that vibrant student experience that comes from the creative opportunities. You heard Jenny talk this morning about the student engagement opportunities that we do at the institution. And Jill talk about the career development opportunities so that those placements, all of that is part of creating that vibrant student experience, as well as athletics. Our women's hockey team ranked 4th in the nation. And the wonderful things that they did this year and this season, all of that is creating the vibrant student experience that we think is also really important for us as we continue to talk about the opportunities that exist at the university and telling that story and telling that narrative that really matters. So that is part of what we're doing as we look ahead to the future and thinking about ways that we can really bring forward more and more students to our institution. In the fall of 2025, we're super excited about that incoming first-year class. Right now, year over year, we are 20% up in our confirmations as far as new students that are interested in coming to the university. And so we're super excited about that. And a lot of great compliments go to Trevor and his team who have worked really hard to make this happen. We are now in what's called the anti-melt strategy phase of all of this, which is continuing to work with those scholars to make sure that they show up in August and move in and move into their residence hall experience, but really excited about what this means for us as we move forward. We're also then continuing to plan about our enrollment growth and that overall strategy. Our current retention rates and our graduation rates are also at an all-time high. And that is a continued way that we are leaning into wanting to invest in student success and thinking about how we create a student success center that really supports the ongoing accomplishments of our undergraduate scholars. And so we're looking at creating kind of a one-stop shop for all of our academic resources so that scholars can find access to those tools. We're looking at academic coaching that moves beyond just academic advising, but really helps them think about how do they incorporate some of the high-impact practices, the research, the study abroad, the internship experiences into their overall experiences. We're also looking at how we better partner with the other higher ed, the community colleges, for example, as well as the K-12 institutions. We're launched the Duluth Promise, which is an initiative in the city of Duluth to partner with this public school district, as well as Lake Superior Community College to outline pathways to degrees that help support workforce development. And so we've also pulled in the economic development agency in the city of Duluth, as well as the career development part of Duluth, to really think about how we partner with them to communicate the educational pathways to workforce development and meeting some of the workforce needs in the region. And then, as Trevor mentioned, we're really looking at how we lean into the access mission that is part of a land-grant institution in the University of Minnesota. As you mentioned, we were identified by Carnegie as an opportunity university, which means that we have both high access as well as high earnings upon graduation. I believe that my colleague, the University of Minnesota Rochester, was also in that group. So there were two public four-year institutions in the state of Minnesota that fell into that, but only two in the entire state that fell into that opportunity university. And we're going to lean into that as a way to say, you can come to our institution, you have access, and it can be affordable. And guess what? By the time you graduate, you will have earnings that are 50% higher than what you would get if you only had a high school degree. And that is what that high earnings classification means. And so we're really going to tell that story as part of the overall picture. And the last story I want to tell before we open it up to conversations with you all, we also want to feature and tell the story of what people are doing with a wonderful UMD degree. We've got several of them on the board. And you all are great examples. But we also have somebody that the world is kind of watching right now. And as the conclave meets and votes on the new pope, one of the cardinals is actually a UMD alumnus who graduated. He is now the Bishop of Hong Kong and is a cardinal and is a part of the conclave that is making decisions right now on the next pope. And so you can come to Duluth. Wow. You can go anywhere. Getting into that story about the power of our alums and the role that they're playing is a big part of what we are looking forward to tell as we move forward in our future. So I want to thank you for your time. We are constantly looking at how we can be cost sensitive and thinking about that access mission, how we measure the effectiveness of the initiatives. Trevor can ideate and come up with tons of really creative solutions. The important piece is how do we measure that and make sure that we are investing in what is most effective? And then how do we also look at those retention strategies so that the scholars that we're bringing to our institution are able to be successful and accomplish their educational goals, which include their academic goals, their career goals, and their personal goals. And that is part of what we're doing at the University of Minnesota Duluth and partnering with the larger University of Minnesota. And we're happy to be a part of it. So thank you for the opportunity to share that story, and we now open it up for questions or comments.
Thank you, Chancellor Nees and Vice Chancellor Eagle. That was great. I was so enthused, I'm ready to sign up myself, maybe start another career. That sounds really great. And happy to hear UMD and UMR in those categories. First, Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. And Chancellor Nees, great closing. You answered the questions that I had. So just a shout out to a couple of specifics was the Opportunity University that you and Rochester share. That's commendable. I think that is something to really key in on in your strategy and your Duluth Promise program and Pathways Focus. So I'll just say congratulations on a very sound and aggressive strategy.
Thank you, Regent Davenport.
Yeah, you're here. Thank you. Just now. Regent Turner.
Well, first of all, we just have the white smoke has come up.
White smoke, so they selected a pope.
Oh, maybe it's the Duluth. It's a Duluth.
Doesn't say who, but it's white smoke.
It's a Duluth alum. We really.
I visited.
We'll find out soon.
The Bishop of Hong Kong. We're going to be doing a happy dance, right?
Well, that's fantastic. Do you have any other question, or is that just?
I have a comment. Sidetrack, I'm Catholic.
Great comments.
Sidetrack.
Yeah, okay.
I love that picture of the bulldog sitting with the little kids, et cetera. And I know when Regent Farnsworth and I, my first year, we went out to western Minnesota, and everywhere we looked at the county fair was North Dakota, North Dakota, North Dakota. And that's where it started me to think. And then we went to visit Crookston, where they bring in school kids and things like that to start that identity process with the university at a younger age. What's his name, Champ, the bulldog? Does he ever visit some of the elementary schools and things like that and show up at their little school festivals or things like that? No, I'm serious.
That's great.
That's how, and then bring along little T-shirts and things like that, so these kids start to, I know it's a long-range plan, but that was such an adorable picture. And what a perfect age to start getting kids to identify that that is where they're going to go when they grow up.
Thank you for the question, Chair Johnson, Regent Turner. I think part of, you heard earlier for those of you that were in the Student Affairs meeting, the Student Life meeting, heard earlier from about our recreation and outdoor program that have a summer institute where we're bringing youth onto the campus all summer long. And then our athletic camps are also huge. And so part of what the athletic director, the vice chancellor for Student Life, and Trevor, the vice chancellor, they all came to me and said, we need money for swag. And we need money for the small little T-shirts that have Champ the Bulldog on it, so that as these scholars come or these young children come and spend time on the institution, they go home with a T-shirt. And to some extent, the opportunity for them to wear that T-shirt in their schools and to promote the university is huge for us. And the opportunity for that peer endorsement that comes because they're wearing a Bulldog T-shirt already in elementary school, middle school is a way that we're doing that. We're also doing it through a lot of opportunities to bring in some of the youth sports leagues to participate in the actual athletic events. And so the little tots on ice skates are out there and working with our hockey teams, for example. And so all of that is a big part of it. As far as visiting the schools, that's a piece that we're looking at. How do we strengthen the outreach? And that is a big part of enrollment management that often folks don't realize, is that early outreach is a really critical part of the ongoing enrollment strategy that we're looking at investing in and strengthening in that would include more of it. And so that's where the Duluth Promise and partnering with the K-12 school district in town is a really important partnership as we move forward. Trevor, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, it's fantastic. We have over 60 outreach groups, particularly on campus, and literally have thousands of youth throughout the entire academic year, including the summer on campus. And we know that that is our strategic pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. President Cunningham?
Yeah, first of all, thanks so much and congratulations on the, all the work you've done that has led this year to sort of what we're seeing now here in the bump and in just 10 months. And so just really exciting. I think I'm also really appreciative of how you're doing in the earlier way some of the things that we're thinking about more broadly of how are we distinct and how can you use those distinct opportunities to really leverage something amazing like the marine engineering program, et cetera, in the location that you're at. What makes each of our campuses distinct, and how does that fit into the greater sum? So I just think that that's really excellent. And then just to remind the board that in addition to this great enrollment work that I know that the campuses are each doing, we have kicked off, and I think a contract this week is signed with EAB to do the system enrollment planning that we talked about last summer, and that process will commence immediately. And by next January, in addition, taking up some of the work on the campuses and also the Twin Cities campus, which is most definitely included in that. We'll bring some of these best practices in together, but also an understanding for us collectively of what our targets are across our campuses and across the Twin Cities, as well as all of these other strategies. So that will be a full and very comprehensive look at that enrollment system plan that I know the board very much wants. I did not forget. We just have been a bit busy, but we have that contract signed this week, and we will get back to you on that in January when it will come back fully, and probably an interim report along the way with thanks to our new VP of Strategic Initiatives, Ryan Schmissing, who is leading up that effort for me.
And then UMD alum and student body president emeritus, Regent Kenyanya.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Before I get to my comment, Regent Turner, when you were talking about the white smoke, I know no one on this board will be part of another presidential search, but whenever the next one finally is, maybe that's how we'll signal. There's white smoke on the top of McNamara. Chancellor Neese, Vice Chancellor Eagle, thank you for the presentation. Ironically, Chair Johnson, I found that I'm actually the worst regent to give UMD enrollment ideas because it just makes sense to me. Like I could never, I'm like, I don't get it. Why wouldn't someone go there? But I'll try to offer something of value. You know, when we talk about enrollment, I'll offer a truncated version of my usual soliloquy about kind of statewide planning that Regent Davenport's heard a number of times. You know, I think we've long talked about how we wish just our state was better at being strategic, and obviously that's not really fully in our control, Provost Croson, but at the state level, I know there's been talk about that. And I think when we talk about enrollment, there's kind of a dual mindset, at least for me, like from a fiduciary standpoint and a maroon and gold person and, you know, operational side, like we want to get our enrollment up, you know, as University of Minnesota people, but then also as public servants and people just, you know, from the land grant public service side, you know, we look at some of the other universities you listed as partners, right? On this side, they're competitors. On the other side, they're partners because we just want, you know, what's kind of best for the state. I don't know that those are always, of course, they're competing things, but I don't think they have to be, right? I mean, maybe I'm naive to think so, but I feel like if we focus on serving and doing the best job we can for the people of Minnesota, like we will have good outcomes. Where this is leading is you showed that you talked about program changes and you know how those conversations have to be continual, but at sometimes more than others, right? I think, and we know some of our partners and competitors are having similar ones. I think some of you saw there was pretty dramatic changes at Mankato, unfortunately, and other places as well. So when we go back to now look at ours, and here's the question, on that spreadsheet, on that chart, are all the other universities' programs also listed, and are we looking at that lens as well, right? Like we know that this campus and that campus just took away those 20 programs, those 30. I think the number was actually much higher at Mankato. Now, when we go to review ours, is that something that's kind of in mind where we're obviously looking internally to how can our campus fill the seats, but then from the state perspective, we know the state no longer has 50 seats in this discipline. Are we factoring that in when we now consider, you know, whether that's something we're going to change or expand or shrink?
Chair Johnson, Regent Kenya, I think part of what we are doing is a combination of both what is the interest and demand on campus, what is fundamental that we believe that we need to offer, and what is distinctive that we can offer that is unique because of our setting, our situation, or the research and faculty expertise that we have at the institution. Some of those all come together in one spot, right? And so Dr. Hill is a great example. We've got expertise and we also sit on a large lake. And so those things can come together in really nice spaces. And so that's been our initial review of that. Another second stage of this review that we're doing, and you heard from it when my colleagues, Chancellor Carroll and Chancellor Holtz-Claus presented on the system optimization work that we're doing, is we're actually looking across the University of Minnesota at all of our academic programs to say what is the University of Minnesota offering and how do we make sure that we're meeting the workforce needs and the educational needs that are situated in some of those academic programs. And so that is kind of our next step. We haven't done the across the state of Minnesota review yet. A little bit more comprehensive. Maybe our new vice president for strategy. But I think all of that is part of that. It's a great question. I think our first step was to look internally to say what makes us distinctive, what do we want to do as foundational as a research university, and what do we want to do because of demand. And how do we kind of combine all of that in that assessment that we're currently doing at the institution? Next step will be then looking across the University of Minnesota.
It's helpful, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Your presentation exudes enthusiasm and energy. I love that. I can just feel it all the way here from Duluth. So thank you for that. I think that what I liked about it the most is that you're looking out for two things, the students and the communities that you serve. You know, and the students are going to be successful, and you're looking at what do the communities need. By listening to them and involving them, we're going to get these kids on the right path to filling these jobs in these communities. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of jobs that are high-level jobs that are open in northern Minnesota, and you guys are going to plug that gap. So I just want to thank you. You know, I mean, I know they haven't signed they haven't moved in yet, but I think you're on the right track, and I like the way you're rebranding the university, and I just like so many of the things that you're doing. So thank you for all that. So
thank you, Regent Hibbs.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much for your presentations. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Chair Johnson.
Thank you.
Next,
I was going to say 2:30.
our Executive Vice President Provost, Rachel Croson, will give an overview of the Twin Cities core curriculum and discussion regarding that.
Thank you, Chair Johnson and members of the committee.
I think it's actually higher.
For this agenda item, we're going to provide an overview of the status of the core curriculum on the Twin Cities campus. At Twin Cities, that curriculum is called the Liberal Education Curriculum and applies to all undergraduate students. Undergraduate education at almost all universities consists of two essential components. The major, which offers specialized, in-depth knowledge in a specific field, and general education, which provides a broad foundation of knowledge for all students, regardless of their major. Even though the Twin Cities liberal education requirements have successfully provided students with a broad, well-rounded academic foundation, it's remained largely unchanged since 1991, as I will describe. In the Boyer Commission's 2022 report, thought leaders in higher education have identified a pressing need to revitalize undergraduate education by ensuring that general education is not just a checklist, but a transformative experience that prepares students to navigate and contribute meaningfully to the world they inherit. To remain relevant and empowering, the general education curriculum must evolve to foster deeper connections across disciplines and to equip students with the tools to navigate and impact an increasingly interconnected and challenging global landscape. While the major requirements are determined by experts within each discipline, at the Twin Cities campus, the liberal education curriculum is shaped collectively by the university faculty. This authority has long been delegated by the Board of Regents to the University Senate, which has delegated it to the Faculty Senate. This delegation is captured in our administrative policy, which states that requirements regarding breadth of study, that is liberal or general education requirements, and other campus-wide graduation standards must be approved by the faculty governing body for that campus. In addition, our accreditor, the Higher Learning Commission, includes multiple, but two specific mentions of the curriculum. First, that faculty participate substantially in the oversight of the curriculum offered, but also that the institution improves its curriculum based on periodic program review. Attempts to update the Twin Cities liberal education curriculum are not new. The current requirements have been in place since 1991, when the Howe Report was adopted by the Twin Cities delegation of the Faculty Senate. This replaced a system where each college set its own general education requirements. 17 years later, in 2008, the Schiff Report made minor adjustments to the existing curriculum. There were some renamings of requirements, there was a reduction from 2 to 1 social science courses, and there was an addition of a 5th theme course. But almost all of the 1991 curriculum was left intact, and in fact, that report explicitly described itself as providing evolution, not revolution. In 2016, 8 years after the modest 2008 changes and 25 years after the liberal education curriculum was established, Provost Karen Hansen began a pre-planning process to consider whether it was time to revise the liberal education curriculum. The conclusion was that, yes, we should proceed with a revision. In 2017, Provost Hansen convened a faculty committee to undertake that revision. That process took 2 years. It involved campus-wide forums, and it resulted in 2 potential models for consideration. However, in December 2019, 11 years after the modest 2008 changes and 28 years after the curriculum was established, neither proposal was approved by Faculty Senate. We did successfully make a smaller change in 2021 after the murder of George Floyd, when Faculty Senate agreed to rename and redefine the diversity and social justice theme requirement to be race, power, and justice in the United States, and it became a requirement for all students instead of a choice. So I arrived in March 2020. We were working on other emergencies, but in 2022, I began a second attempt at updating our liberal education curriculum. At this point, it had been 14 years since the modest 2008 changes and 31 years since the liberal education curriculum had been established. Over the next 3 years, the faculty-led committee engaged in benchmarking with peers, hosting open forums, and many consultation meetings, including academic departments, directors of undergraduate study, academic advisors, collegiate student boards, the undergraduate student government, faculty governance, college leadership groups. The committee also consulted with employers who hire our students to understand what the skill sets that are needed. They adjusted and readjusted their proposal in response to feedback from those meetings, and ultimately proposed what I believe was an excellent and innovative new liberal education curriculum, which is linked in your docket. In the meantime, our Big Ten peers have updated their general education curricula. This list goes back to 2008, when our modest changes were implemented. I do want to note the University of Maryland's commitment to revising their curriculum every 20 years, which I think is a very healthy system to set in place. The proposal that's in your docket was presented to the Senate multiple times over the past 3 years. Each time the feedback received was incorporated by the committee in their proposal, which continued to evolve. In April, the curriculum was brought to the Twin Cities Faculty Senate for a vote, where it unfortunately did not pass. Subsequently, 16 Twin Cities faculty senators asked for a special meeting to reconsider the curriculum, which was held on Tuesday of this week. For that meeting, the curriculum committee developed a list of commonly raised objections and the responses to those objections, which are also in your docket. They collected and presented additional letters of support, also in your docket, including many endorsements from students themselves. In fact, yesterday, an op-ed from one of our students appeared in the Minnesota Daily supporting the new core. The Senate meeting began with a presentation and a discussion. The first motion was to revise the core curriculum for the entering class of fall 2027, so 2 years hence, not specifically a vote on this curriculum proposal, simply a willingness to consider any change at all. That motion did not pass. We are now 17 years past the modest 2008 changes and 34 years after the establishment of our liberal education curriculum, and based on that vote, the current curriculum will remain in place. President Cunningham and I wanted to make you aware of this important development. We both support faculty governance and respect their expertise in the area of curricula. However, we believe that as an institution, we need to ensure that our curriculum can modernize with the times and on behalf of our students. Chair Johnson, that concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to take any questions that the board may have or the president may have at this time.
Can I go, President Cunningham?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Croson and Chair Johnson. So I did feel, we bring you this update without an immediate obvious solution. I think it's important. Provost Croson is nearing the end of her tenure. This has been an effort she's undertaken for several years. The provost before her undertook it for several years. I don't think it's been discussed here at the board, certainly in my time, and I'm not sure when since then, that this is ongoing. And so I feel like that it was responsible for us to bring you an update on where we sit with general education requirements here, what our peers are doing, and what this might mean. And I might have you speak to potential concerns of accreditation as well in a moment, Provost Croson. So I do want to just name the elephant in the room, which is, nationally there are increased concerns, from our faculty, not from our faculty, but from faculty in higher education in general around, having them have a loss of control over curriculum and overreach that is considered or concerns about being political or not. And so I just want to name that elephant in the room and name that I really respect that our faculty and our shared governance is tasked with coming up with the curriculum, and that I believe that is the right answer. I'm somewhat dismayed that we were not able to move ahead with what was a faculty-generated curriculum that had multiple input over years by faculty that was endorsed by our students. And so, what I bring to the board today is it's clear to me that there's a problem I will not dictate or suggest what the curriculum should be. The idea that we can't have that shared governance, it will not update it, has passed to not update it in the next 2 years is a concern. And again, while I don't have a solution to this, I want to raise to the board two things. One is I think it highlights for me a need for me and what will be a new provost to dig into what the issue is exactly at the Faculty Senate for why this is not moving ahead. I need to understand that better. There's been good people in the room that have been working with the Faculty Senate, and I think I and a new provost will need to dig into that, and we'll look for a solution that will indeed have a faculty-led curriculum, an updated curriculum. But we are going to need to think about a timely solution to do that and understand what the faculty concerns are that are leading us to not only have not this curriculum pass, which was again generated by faculty committee, but also a vote that says that there's not a belief that any curriculum needs to pass in the next 2 years. So we have a problem for which I don't have an immediate solution, and I want to take some care to make sure that, to express my strong belief again that the curriculum, should be generated by the disciplinary experts, but we do have an issue here that I don't have an immediate solution to. My other concern, and the reason I think the board needs to understand this, and is a concern over our accreditation, which is this fall, and we potentially can be dinged. Give me the right words, Provost Croson. We can for not having a curriculum that has been modified, and I don't know if you can speak to that more eloquently.
Yes, of course. So, one of the requirements for HLC, one of the criteria 3F, is that the institution improves its curriculum based on periodic program review. So I think there is an argument to be made that over the past 10 years, we have reviewed the curriculum and chosen not to improve it.
Question. Regent Davenport.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I want to first say I really appreciated the support materials that were provided with the links, and if we haven't all looked at that, we need to. You will see letters, you will see video, you will see a lot of testimony. And I have to say I have not received any email as of 7 a.m. this morning, either way, either side of this curriculum, core curriculum debate. I also want to express my strong support for faculty governance and support for faculty expertise on the curriculum. I was astounded that this has not moved forward. This was on the agenda when we came, Regent Kenyanya and Regent Mayron and myself. And I've got to say, think about where you were in 1990 to 1995. And I followed this then. And I was in my 30s and new in higher ed. And we have not changed. I'm just absolutely astounded, and I will use your phrase, timeliness, as we move forward on this, and I just urge support by the board to support movement on the very essence of higher education and the core curriculum. I'm just astounded.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Johnson, Regent Davenport. So, as I mentioned in the presentation, there were some small changes made in 2008, so it's not been zero. As we heard from our faculty in the Faculty Senate discussion, of course, individual faculty have innovated their courses, right? Courses adjust, new information gets integrated. That has absolutely happened. But as I mentioned in my remarks in one of Faculty Senate, innovating a course is not the same as innovating a curriculum. And so I share your and the President's concern about the length of time that this has gone on and the two successive, failures in innovation.
Regent Gully.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Provost Croson. So I am a little bit new to this process, but I will say that I have heard from a number of faculty who said that the reason that they voted it down, from what I can hear, so I got a list of reasons, that they just didn't think that, they felt like they reviewed the curriculum and felt that the version that we have was actually better than the one that was proposed. And so they felt like the general feedback was that they felt like they did review the curriculum and they felt that the new model was just change, not improvement. And so I'm wondering, is it required for our accreditation that we update it or that we review the curriculum for potential updates?
So the language in the accreditation talks about innovate.
Innovate.
That's a little neither review nor update. I will encourage members of the board to take a look at the document in the docket around frequently asked questions and responses, because you will see there some of the concerns that were raised and some of how they were addressed. I will also say, as I mentioned in the presentation, throughout these last 3 years, there were the original proposal that was generated and discussed in Faculty Senate, as I said 7 different times now, has evolved. Originally, it had a 1-credit course in the beginning. That came off because people had concerns about it. There was originally only 1 required area, which was the race, power, and justice, which we currently require. In response to faculty feedback, we added a second one on global perspectives. So I think the committee has, again, faculty-driven committee, has been really responsive to the concerns that have been raised all along the process. And of course, not everybody is going to like every part of every innovation, but the criteria do specify innovate.
Can I just ask one follow-up question? One of the faculty members who reached out to me pointed out that some universities, including Columbia, have had the same curriculum model for over 100 years. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. That was what I was told. So
I would need to phone a friend on someone else's curriculum. It would be amazing for me to imagine that were true, but it's wouldn't want to go on record for that.
Kind of add, it's one thing to reform and change a course. We're not talking about a course being changed. This is the required curriculum. For those, you have your major, you do that, but outside of that, to have a general education, knowledge, wide knowledge, as a graduate of the University of Minnesota, you need to have the most relevant kind of courses and subjects for today's world, in addition to your major.
And can I just, I'm sorry to take up too much time, but so I understand that, but I'm not sure that everyone understands what we're talking about. Would you just give like a short overview of what it means to have a liberal arts core or a core curriculum? I know, and a lot of people probably know, but I'm not sure that everyone knows.
Sure. So these are a set of course requirements that every undergraduate must fulfill. Part of our curriculum, both the existing one and the proposed one, is that it has to align with the Minnesota transfer curriculum so that courses that are taken at Minnesota State colleges or other universities will count toward our curriculum. That's the case for both where we are now and where we would be. The current curriculum and the new proposed curriculum are similar in many ways. They include writing requirements. They're different in different ways. If you want, I can call a friend and Vice Provost Singh can come and describe all the differences, but maybe that's better timed given where we are for time, for a different thing. I think had the curriculum passed, we would be having a different discussion about what was the old one, what is the new one, what are the pluses and minuses. But given where we are, I think it's probably more fruitful to have a discussion about what our process should be moving forward or where we are.
I think that's right, Provost, because I would point out there was a group of faculty that worked very hard for many years who thought that these innovations would advance our students and would advance their ability to be prepared and great citizens. And the students widely endorsed this. The student governance widely endorsed this. We know our students look at other universities and are looking for places to be where they feel that they will get the opportunities that they need in a modern manner. Again, I never want to be in a position and don't ever plan on being in a position where I or would recommend the board is dictating what curriculum should be. But I do believe the times are changed. I can remember where I was in 1991 and I didn't have a computer or a laptop or a phone. There are many, many things different. And so what I believe things do need to innovate for the world that we're in. And that students want to see that a university also is being innovative in how they're being put together. And so we have a problem for which I do not yet have a solution. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, just if you want to look in the Minnesota Daily this week, there was an excellent editorial by a student leader about this topic. We have several other people wanting to ask questions, and Regent Turner, you're next.
Yes, I just have a curiosity question about how this shared governance works. The voting process, is it you have to be present to vote? Or is it like an email vote? Because if it's present to vote, you can very much having a lobbying effort to make sure, and so I'm just curious as to how the voting system works in this kind of world.
Yeah, Chair Johnson, Regent Turner, I'm going to answer that, but I happen to have somebody on my staff who used to be on the Senate staff, and he will correct me if I get it wrong. So my understanding is that this is, first of all, a vote of the Twin Cities faculty senators.
Okay.
It's not all of University Senate, and it's not even all of Faculty Senate. It's just the Twin Cities faculty senators. You do need to be present to vote, although these are Zoom meetings, so it's an electronic thing. And if you can't make it, you may designate an alternate to vote on your behalf.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Mayron.
Thank you. The general sentiment that was expressed by Regent Davenport, I share. I was absolutely stunned to hear that we don't have a new curriculum in place. This came before us in, I think it was October 2019. Myself, Regent Kenyanya, Regent Davenport came on in May of 2019. And we had that presentation about the two different proposals, and ultimately they did not pass, and then there was more feedback in this whole process. And the fact that that we're talking about a curriculum that was developed in a previous century, and to even begin to think that that would be satisfactory in what is going on in education today is inconceivable to me. I am greatly concerned if we don't do it, someone will do it to us, whether it be the legislature, which has happened in other states, or through accreditation. Someone else will take up this issue rather than us, and who better than our faculty to design this and stay current than others who are not part of the higher education scheme. I understand, President Cunningham, you don't have a solution, but I think as a board, I'd like to entertain the thought that we set a deadline by which this needs to get resolved, by which we need to have a new curriculum in place. We can't dictate as a board. I don't have any expertise. I won't be here, but none of us do as to what it should be. But this needs to be finished, in my view, to be current and be able to attract students, make sure we don't jeopardize our accreditation, et cetera. So I would suggest that we set a deadline of 6 months to finish this up and to come back and report to the board what the new curriculum was adopted by the Senate. And I will also say, when I look at the background information here, the bylaws of the Board of Regents, the University Senate Constitution, they talk about that the design of the education component is committed to the president, the University Senate, and the several faculties. This is not just a Senate faculty issue. This is broader. It's committed to our president. I understand we delegate it to the experts in the field, but I think the administration overall needs the support to get this done as well, and with the continued consultation of those. The other piece that's stunning is I've never seen such a breadth of support across the board for this current proposal, whether it's students or deans or whomever, and going through that whole consultative process. And then I think it's 14 faculty members when we talk about percentage, but 14 faculty members, if I have the numbers right, who voted against this, and the balance of the faculty senate did endorse it. So I would like to see this get done and set a deadline by which it is done.
Okay, I wonder if we can have some discussion after this about what the route would be, whether it goes on the agenda for next month or have some time to prepare it. Anybody have some discussion afterwards, whatever? I know we're kind of running short on time here. These are very critical things. I appreciate everybody's passion for this. It's super important, and I certainly share that. So we'll have some conversations in this committee and the whole board about next steps in this process. Okay.
And let me just say, whether that's also consulting with the administration, the faculty,
of course.
About how do we bring this to closure? We need to bring this to closure.
Yeah, we don't know right now
what it looks like.
Yeah, but thank you. And I think finally, Regent Hipsch.
Well, I share the same sentiments as the rest of the regents have shared, and I'm just surprised. I'm really surprised that this isn't at the biggest issue for faculty to set this core curriculum. If I was faculty, that would be the first thing I would do when I got up in the morning, is make sure the core curriculum is correct. I wouldn't delay this anymore. I think it's really important to the community. I think it's really important to the legislature. It's really important to the students. And it's really important to the state. I don't understand what the big issue is. And I guess the next question is if, we share governance and they're the best equipped to do this, but if they don't do that, what are the next steps for us to do it? And I don't really want to get involved in setting curriculum. So, but whatever we have to do, we have to do. So that would be my question.
Thank you. Well, we'll continue the conversation, but
I think,
sorry, President Cunningham.
No, it was you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Regent Gully.
Thank you. I appreciate the time on this conversation. I was wondering, well, first, I just wanted to clarify, but I'm not positive but our classes change all the time. So our curriculum is like, it says you have to take 2 social sciences classes and you have to take 2 writing intensive, I'm making this up, so I don't know that this is the exact thing, but 2 writing intensive classes, and you need to take 2 English classes, and you need to take 2 math classes. So it's not that the classes haven't changed, and I just want to clarify that, because I think we're saying things like,
well, we used typewriters back in the 80s and now we're using computers. And to say like that sort of is conflating two different things. But what I wanted to ask, and I'll definitely let you have the mic after this, but why didn't it pass if it felt innovative? What was the concern from faculty that stopped it from passing?
Maybe Raj?
Yeah, we can bring Raj back up, and he can talk a little bit about what the new curriculum looked like. But again, I think that FAQ document is helpful.
What Robin said is exactly what I was saying too. It's courses have changed, but the
Curriculum has changed.
So Chair Johnson, members of the board, President Cunningham, the curriculum was changed in in ways that was meaningful to the students. The big change, the students, when they come to us, they say that the current liberal education curriculum feels like checkboxing. So they kind of think of it as a barrier to get to their majors. The majors also have requirements. None of the students say that because my major has 8 courses I have to take, that seems checkboxy, because they understand what they are for. They don't understand why do I have to, a student in computer science, why do I have to take a literature course? A student in computer science doesn't understand why do you take a biology course? And what this committee did was something wonderful. They said, you know what, let's step back and ask the question why we are asking them to take the course. And when we talk to the student, we say, you know, all wicked problems in life need various ways of thinking. So for example, you know, if you want to think in a way, you don't need a calculus course, but you need a quantitative reasoning course, because quantitative reasoning is very important of how you think about the problem, right? You don't need a course in biology, but you need a course in scientific thinking, because that's how you will solve wicked problems. So they said, you know what, take a course in scientific thinking, take a course in quantitative reasoning. You don't need a course in literature, but you need a course in humanistic thinking. And to get humanistic thinking, you need it to understand what's the purpose of life. How do you find meaning in life? How do you find the importance of romantic love? Well, that's why you need a literature course. But let's call it humanistic thinking, because that's what you will learn in that course. You don't need a history course, but you need to learn analyzing the past, because from the past you will learn the future. Right? So by making these things very meaningful to the students, they made it like the students were felt. And every time I present to the students, to the undergraduate student board, I've never had in my 30 years of as an educator talking about curriculum and students out there getting excited about it. We have never seen such support before. And I understand my faculty. You know, they're very good intended people, but they get worried that what if the literature is called humanistic meaning, maybe that will threaten my own thing, you know? So change is hard, change is tough. There's an immune response to change, but we have to change for the future. And that's why the hope was there. Second thing that the curriculum did was it gave students a choice to pick a focal area. Today, students want to make a difference. They said, you know, if you want to do environment, that's what you believe in, you'll get 3 courses in environment, and then you can go and do something deep there. If you believe in well-being, if you believe in equity, if you believe in civics, right? So this curriculum was innovative. Today, Michigan State is called us. They want to learn from our proposal, and I won't be surprised if they take up all our work and adapt that. And what a loss would that be? Sorry, it took more time than 30 seconds.
Thank you, it's really helpful.
That's very helpful. I think we all have some sense of what it means to be an educated human being. And it isn't just to be a technician at this or that. It's a much broader view. Whatever, if you could be an engineer, scientist, you need to be able to write, think about, know some history, you know, be able to communicate. There's so much more to that. And I think that's the big picture that we advocate. And, you know, of course, we're down the road a ways, so we've had some of these experiences. But I think it's hard, because when you make your course or your area might be cut in terms of number of classes required, and so that's somewhat threatening. I would expect to different departments or concerns.
If I may just interject, the risk of being cut is not there, because if you want to teach humanistic thinking, it's going to come from literature. A biologist or a physicist or a finance professor like me is not going to be able to teach humanistic thinking. But it's the fear of change that sometimes drives us so much more than rational worries.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Correct. And hopefully that's what an education helps us see. Okay. I think.
Did President Cunningham may have had?
No, I'm very grateful. I think this has been a multi-year effort. It crosses 2 provosts. We will work with you, Chair Johnson, and on the board's wishes. And then, like I said, this will be something that, I think, again, should be led, as it has been, by the provost with shared governance. But we have to really dig into what the issue here is with the change management and with so many of the faculty supportive of this, what exactly is going on. The vote was close. So I think we have work to do, and I'll have work to do with the new provost as they come in on sorting this out.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for this
I'm sorry, I
important
usually bring
discussion.
to you a solution, but I don't have a solution this week.
To be continued, is that fair? All right. We do have I know it's getting late, we've got a late start. We'll keep moving forward here, and a couple more important things, other important things left to approach now. So please, we're going to talk about the Board of Regents policy, academic misconduct. Joanne Billings, Associate Vice President of Research Integrity and Compliance, and Danielle Rintola, Director of Research Integrity and Compliance. So we will review the proposed amendments to the Board of Regents policy, academic misconduct. So again, policy amendments. Walking us through the amendments are the associate leaders that I just introduced. And before we turn to the discussion, go ahead. Let's do the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Johnson and committee members. I will be primarily presenting today, but I am joined by Dr. Joanne Billings as our Research Integrity Officer. I manage policy for our office, so I will be doing most of the talking through the presentation. So we're here today because we're providing an overview of the proposed changes to the Board of Regents policy, academic misconduct. This policy hasn't been changed in 15 years, so we're establishing why the changes are necessary and why we need to update the policy. And we are requesting that the board reviews the policy changes for action at the June 2025 meeting. So a little bit of why we made these changes. There is a new federal regulatory policy from the Office of Research Integrity. In September 2024, they implemented a new revised policy 42 Code of Federal Regulations 93 regarding research misconduct. This policy is applicable to all health and human services agencies. And institutions are required to comply with this federal policy to maintain our assurance and eligibility for future HHS funding. The policy has not been updated in 15 years, as I mentioned, so it needed to be revisited and updated to reflect the current research community needs. Additional substantive changes that support compliance with the ORI revision are found in the proposed changes to the administrative policy for research misconduct. Okay. So for the category, for the initial category piece, this is a very simple change. We're just requesting that it's moved from the human resources category to academic to align with where the other research policies are located. The policy was also reorganized into actual sections. It's never had sections, just subdivisions before. And then the title is being revised to reflect research misconduct, as the title academic could be misleading, and people could either think, one, that it is about student academic integrity issues, or that it is very specific to, student-related affairs, and we want to make sure that it's very clear to research. And so the other big change then is, we have two parts, or a few parts, but section 1, the scope, we want to make sure that we're clarifying what it's governing, and that it's governing research misconduct, not just misconduct, because we want to make sure it's very focused to research misconduct. For section 2, guiding principles, that was the former main statement of the policy. The language has been revised to replace the word discourage to does not tolerate, to read that the University of Minnesota has a responsibility to foster a research environment that promotes the responsible conduct of research and research training and does not tolerate research misconduct. There is also the addition of core statements about research integrity included in this section. There's been an addition of definitions of what constitutes research misconduct. This includes fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. It also defines who is included in the term researcher, of whom this policy is applicable to. In subdivision 5, the definition of research misconduct has been revised to adhere to the federal policy definition. In section 4, implementation, there has been language refinement and clarification to maintain consistency, and this being applicable to research misconduct and identifying how cases of misconduct involving scholarly or creative activities are handled by the university. The other new subdivision clarifies when students are subject to this policy, which is when they are working on a federally sponsored project and/or acting as an agent of the university. The last piece of section 5 is just a minor language addition. So we bring to you then discussion of whether this captures a modern research misconduct policy from which our administrative policies and procedures can be developed, and do you think there are elements that should be captured in this policy that are not currently present? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. At this point, before we turn to the discussion, I just want to remind the committee that this month the policy is for us to review, and we will return in June to actually take action on this. So this is review in May and action in June. Okay. With that, are there any questions? Regent Mayron.
Yes, thank you. My question is, goes to the second bullet here. Are there elements captured that should be captured by the policy? And as I read through it and the genesis for the change here, it appears what we're trying to do is conform to the change in the regulations. And I understand that. And my question is, those regulations, as you talked about on the slide, they deal with fabrication, they deal with plagiarism. But does that capture those elements, sufficiently capture the different types of things that could amount to research misconduct? For example, our earlier policy talked about destruction of data. We included that. That's not, and that's under this proposed language is no longer included. So my concern is, does this adequately cover the different types of research misconduct that may occur if it doesn't amount to plagiarism and it doesn't amount to fabrication? Now, I understand the policy has language in there that refers to our subdivision 5, talks about governed by other policies of the Board of Regents, the Code of Conduct, or the faculty tenure. But when I go and look at those, I really can't find anything that is going to be, other than some maybe very general language about being ethical, that would assist us in saying, you've engaged in misconduct related to your research, and maybe it isn't fabrication, and maybe it isn't plagiarism, but it is for this reason, and that's not acceptable, and there are going to be ramifications. So I'm concerned, and my question is, can we be broader and be more inclusive than what the CFR, the regulation, requires? Can we make our policy broader to make sure we're capturing kind of the unknowns?
I'll go ahead. Yeah. Thank you, Chair Johnson and Regent Mayron. It's a great question. I think this is just, as we go back to 42 CFR 93, our responsibility in this policy is to reflect that and research misconduct, as you said, as the fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. But as a research integrity and compliance office, if things were to come to us that would reflect other behaviors that would be not consistent with integrity or compliance, those also get appropriately, evaluated and would be, triaged appropriately and looked at through, ways to either address them through, how you would look into how you would characterize them as allegations or concerns. And then we would use, our, colleagues, looking at things like code of conduct and the tenure code in order to address these issues. So we wouldn't let them fall through the cracks. I think that we would certainly address them through other means.
Regent Mayer, follow-up.
I understand you won't let it fall through the cracks. What I'm more concerned about is there is a complaint of research misconduct, say, against a faculty member, and that faculty member comes back and says, look, this isn't plagiarism or falsification. This isn't, so I didn't violate a policy here. You can't point to a policy that I am violating. And so to the extent you're now going to invoke any procedures under the tenure code if they are tenured or other code, it's not covered. And I want to make sure that we are capturing that this isn't too narrow in terms of what our policy says. If in fact there are other, and these are by way of examples that the federal government has come up with, presumably because they've encountered this in the research that they fund. But are there others that we may say, you know what, this doesn't pass muster for us, even if it doesn't fall under those categories, and we have the ability to investigate it, and if necessary, take action as well. So my concern about it is the policy too narrow. But you're the experts, and President Cunningham, you came from a research institution, and I don't know what other peers or, peers meaning not necessarily Big Ten, but other big research institution or powerhouses, how they address their issue of research misconduct.
Could I just add here? I think that's a good question. It's important. I wonder, though, we can't probably list every possible, so why can't we say fabrication, falsification, plagiarism, and any other, kind of put it in a broader open, that's not limited to that. These are examples of it, and this has to be explored, but
including but not limited to.
That's what I was thinking, but by the time I get in, I forgot. Yes, including but not limited to X, Y, Z. I think that might be a way to get it, but.
Maybe you can phone a friend. So I'm happy to jump in, and I'm sorry I lost the train of thought here, a little hypoglycemic before lunch. So, but the fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism is the standard national language. This is the language that we are working with federal agencies when we report to them, when agencies report to them on that there's a problem. This is the language that they expect to see. These are national standards for which we, work. When I was VPR in my last role, I would have regular communication with the NIH about, if they had a report of a concern over misconduct, whether they got it or we got it. We were all working with uniform policy and uniform language. There'd be no reason for us to deviate from the national agency standards on this, and the procedures that we have here, and I did do this, and I did it at my last job, and I've written nationally about it, are very much in line with best practices on the topic. So I would suggest we don't wordsmith.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
That's why it's good to have attorney judges on the and physician researchers and all lots of people. Let's see, have Regent Kenyanya.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thanks for the discussion. I have a couple questions. I mean, some similar to Regent Mayron's, and I mean, this is up for review, so we obviously have an opportunity to think about it. I mean, my thinking was, it's good to know that those are standard. I guess it feels like if you add another bullet point, you still meet the required criteria. You've put what you need to put in there, and then we can, especially to Regent Mayron's point, that it seems to actually be no longer covering some things that were previously in there. This is now to my other questions. I'm guessing, because this is a board policy, we obviously have administrative policy after, so maybe some of the detail I was like, well, that's not in there. I imagine if I put them all in front of me and looked across them, maybe I'd find everything covered. So, and particularly it was for me, it was implementation, which is probably covered in some of those other places, as in, okay, this is the definition. Now, if we find that this wasn't complied with, then what? I kind of that process and whatnot. But I imagine that belongs in some of those other places, whether it's a tenure code or if it's a UEA contract, something like that. And I'm seeing nodding, so that's helpful. So then my other question is on scope. We have that defined as research misconduct at the University of Minnesota. To my understanding that, faculty members have, dual appointments, sometimes visiting faculty. They may be working in a private industry lab or something like that. How do we think about, and I'm not proposing that this be expanded, I guess I'm asking the question, how is that usually treated in the academy in terms of, if we find out there was misconduct over there, it wasn't here, it wasn't at this university, but it was the same faculty member. Is that scope appropriate, or does that need to cover that as well?
Sure.
So we went and defined all of the different possibilities of who this would cover under the term researcher. And that is found in subdivision 4. Individual employed by the university as defined by the Board of Regents policy, employee group definitions with responsibility for the design, performance, or reporting of university research, or a student, as previously noted, or an individual with a role of the design, performance, or reporting of university research, or acting as an agent of the university to perform university research. And if you go back to, you had asked about the administrative policy piece, so there is a piece in there of when there's more than one institution involved in a collaboration, for example, of how it's handled, and it kind of depends on who receives the complaint at that point as to who takes the primary lead, but we would collaborate with a company or another academic institution if they're doing interdisciplinary research with another institution to review those complaints, and that is in the administrative policy in detail for that.
Okay, that's helpful. Briefly, I guess kind of to similar to Regent Mayron's earlier comment, I think it would be helpful if the policy then covered you in doing that, right? I mean, you get that complaint, and you and other mechanisms, at the university, depending what happened, are going to take it seriously. But then if the policy says, no, the scope is actually research misconduct at the University of Minnesota, if I'm the person in question, I might say this policy actually doesn't apply. So maybe just considering whether it's expanding the scope or revising the language in researcher, just to make it clear that if you're a university employee and the misconduct happened outside the university, I think we still care about that and want to address that. But yeah, that's just the feedback, and that's why it's for review, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Actually, excuse me, Regent Verhalen has been waiting for a long time with her hand up. And she's next. At last, thank you for your patience.
No worries, Chair Johnson. Fortunately, I haven't been sitting here raising.
So if it was a physical hand, that would have been a really long time. Thank you.
Yes. So my question is also to scope. New section 4, subdivision 2 identifies that researchers may not engage in actions that constitute research misconduct. And I'm wondering, at least for your consideration, whether the definition of research misconduct is also sufficiently broad, but in a different way than Regent Mayron raised. It doesn't speak to a researcher who willfully disregards doing any diligence on the information they're receiving, for example. A researcher is defined as the individual, a student or other individual acting as an agent. But the question I have, because research misconduct speaks so specifically to the individual action of fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism, is the policy sufficiently written to also incorporate an individual who willfully disregards their duty to investigate whether the information they're receiving actually does any of these things?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chair Johnson and Regent, I think that's a very excellent question. I think I hear what you're saying, that it really is being very specific to, our guidance from ORI and thinking specifically about the definitions that they are bringing forward to us to kind of go through our processes of how we manage, our, fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. So it is very specific, and I appreciate that. So I think it's something that we can certainly take under consideration. I mean, I think it's a fair question.
I guess I would also say, Chair Verhalen, is when you submit, as a researcher, when you submit a paper or you submit a grant, you are, it is the accepted practice that is your work. I mean, unless you are citing it, that is the industry standard. So it is the responsibility of the PI and of the author to ensure that the work is indeed accurate, and PIs have to certify to as much when they accept the awards and the grants, and so that is certainly the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
We also, I want to say, go ahead.
And I totally understand that and respect that. I'm thinking of a situation, total hypothetical, where an agent acting on the university receives information. They may not be the PI, but they receive information. They pass it on to the PI or the researcher. But that agent who's acting on the university, who is by definition a researcher, didn't actually do their diligence to see if the information they got is plagiarized, falsified, or otherwise.
I think I lost you on the example.
Okay.
So the hypothetical I'm thinking of is if there's an agent of the university who is receiving information or evaluating information and doesn't do any diligence on whether it's plagiarized or falsified or otherwise, but hands that off to the next person, maybe the PI, et cetera, but they didn't actually do any diligence on whether that information.
It's still the responsibility of the primary author and the PI. It doesn't matter how they got it. It doesn't matter what research assistant, what tech. It doesn't matter whether it was your postdoc or your undergrad or your co-author. It is your responsibility as an author to the paper or the PI of the grant to have the data be rigorous and original and cited properly. And that is very clear in the research world. It doesn't matter. There is no excuse. And across the country, people certainly have been fired for as much. It does not matter if your tech was falsifying the data and you put it in the paper. It was your responsibility to ensure the integrity of the data that was in the paper when you submitted it, and that is what you certify when you sign up to be the author and the lead author on the paper and the PI on the grant. And if I misspoke that in any way here, please tell me, but that is certainly the national standard that I'm familiar with.
And that's, just to be clear, President Cunningham, that's not the person I'm worried about. I understand the PI has those responsibilities. I'm thinking about the intermediate researcher.
I'm not sure. I guess I'm not sure.
Could I, Chair, excuse me, Regent, maybe I'm just asking because it's hard when trying to do virtual, right, of maybe how your committee. So maybe are you thinking about like someone like ourselves that might receive an allegation of research misconduct? Are you thinking of somebody in a lab setting, like they receive an allegation of research misconduct, or they receive, or I'm not really clear. Clarification is appreciated.
Yeah, and Chair Johnson, I'm not trying to belabor this point, but you have the PI who's responsible for the grant, responsible for the lead authorship of the paper or the work. Underneath them or supporting them are a number of individuals who would be the definition of researcher.
Right.
If one of those individuals takes information in and passes it on to the PI, so that intermediate person meets the definition because maybe they're a student, maybe they're an agent, but they didn't do their diligence of the information they're getting. Are they getting a pass in this because they didn't actively plagiarize, they didn't actively falsify?
So let me see if I can even give a better, let me augment her. So if I'm a technician and I make up all the data and I hand it to the PI, who is President Cunningham, and say, here, can I, the technician, be investigated, charged with researcher misconduct because I made up stuff? And moreover, and I understand what you're saying is the PI ultimately the lead researcher has to assure themselves and take steps to make sure that the data is accurate. But does the university have the right to say to that technician, you know what, and this is all hypothetical, you're fired because you falsified information that you gave to your PI. I think that's what Regent Verheul and her examples designed to embody. If I'm wrong, she's going to tell me.
It'll have to do.
Oh, yes, so.
Okay.
So Chair Johnson, Regent Mayor.
Yes.
Yes, that individual will be looked at for research misconduct. Because if they were falsifying, fabricating, plagiarizing, that's still something that is an allegation that can be investigated. And the question too then leads to, the PI that, that if this is now in the PI's hands, where's their responsibility lie in understanding that? So I think the point that it's been made is that the PI, should also be assured that what's being done in their lab or their data that they are saying is accurate and as well. So there's responsibility there too.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Regent Verheulen?
Not exactly, but we can take the details offline. It's quite okay.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
I think, are you ready, or do you have?
Yeah.
One short?
Yeah, just not even a question. Thank you for the discussion, AVP and Director. President Cunningham, a couple questions ago, you offered a really helpful explanation, actually, that was helpful for me anyway. And I think every answer I've gotten has mostly made sense. I would just summarize it by saying the discussion that was very illuminating for me isn't quite in the policy for me. Like, I needed the discussion for that to make sense. So I think maybe that's the overall feedback I'd say, that I think everything you're saying makes sense, but it's not all there. And again, to my earlier point, it's board policy, so maybe some of that will be in the administrative policy, but at a high level, I think some of what was eloquently explained should possibly be revised into the policy.
Thank you.
Yeah, just can I make one final?
Sure.
So I think my point and Regent Kenyanya's point is, we understand we have to comply and revise our policy to meet the federal regulation. That's a given. And then the question is, does the university want to do more with their policy to make sure that those who are conducting research understand what constitutes research misconduct. And I do think there are, and I understand there are best practices in the way it works, but I would be more interested in trying to codify some of that in this Regents policy, as opposed to trying to rely on what is best practices and what's out there and could evolve and change over time. So that would be my interest in terms of an overall policy. And I did look at our other policies, trying to see, and I'm not, we refer to any other policies that govern employee conduct, but that gets really broad. And now I can see our general counsel's going to help with this.
Okay, thank you. Okay. General Counsel Peterson, would you like to comment and help us with this, please?
I don't know if it will be helpful, but thank you, Chair Johnson. I just want to offer a humble suggestion in anticipation that you will have another meeting to discuss this. I'm going to try to bridge what I'm hearing is the perspective of those of us with law licenses versus those that are doing the business of investigating research misconduct. Because what I'm hearing is that everybody understands that the lie, whether by fabrication, plagiarism, or falsification, is definitely research misconduct, and the policy is appropriately geared toward it. I think the challenge is we envision in our minds that there are other forms of misconduct besides lying. So there can be misconduct in doing something that harms people, even though you're being truthful about it. There can be things that involve shortcuts in protocols, not following process in a way that infects the research, that maybe makes it fraudulent, but not necessarily technically false. And so there are just a lot of lines there. And I'm speaking from my experience more as a federal prosecutor than as a university general counsel, in that the realm of falsehood is a subset of a much larger realm of misconduct. So I think the question that we should answer for you for the next meeting is, to the extent this policy is geared just toward the lie, is that how we should rest? Or should the policy in some way on the university side expand beyond that, and would that walk us into other other ways that that realm is regulated, or other confusions that will interfere with our ability to follow federal policy?
If I may, Chair Johnson, and thank you, Council Peterson, for the clarity for which you bring. So I would maybe make a plea here. So research misconduct is by definition a narrow thing. It is detailed narrowly, federally, and with our agencies, and it is fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. There is, and this often came up in my last world, an entire other realm of misbehavior. Right. And how we manage this in my last world is, that falls into HR and processes and bad behavior in labs. And so the first thing a good research misconduct, as I'm confident people do have when a complaint comes in, is figure out, is this fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism, and therefore it is in my bucket to investigate for research misconduct. And by research misconduct, they do not mean all bad things that happen in the conduct of research. They mean, are we fabricating and lying about it? And then there is human behavior and all the other things that happen in the world around that research, and that falls typically into HR codes and academic codes. And I would sort of plea that we do not try to confuse those, because they are handled in different places in the university, and they have different policies and procedures associated with them. So now I understand the problem, and there may be codes on bad behavior and not following processes and not following safety codes, certainly, for example, around equipment and things like that. And those all go in a different bucket than this policy. And if those need to be revised or are not strong enough or any of those other things, we could examine them, but I would keep them out of this research misconduct policy, which is a very narrow technical definition.
So to be clear then, going forward, for when we discuss and vote on this in June, we want to keep the focus narrow to what we're talking about with actual research misconduct in this sense.
Yeah, in this sense, of the way it's defined nationally, which is fabrication. And so I think the confusion is the lay term of research misconduct might make one think that it is all bad behavior that happens in a lab, or between a grad student and a mentor, or between, inappropriately buying materials, or all the ways that which, fraud unfortunately happens in a very small percentage of human beings across the planet, right? So, but those are not defined the way that this office would be set up to investigate, and then those would be shifted to a different policy and to a different office. Yeah. Now I get it.
Council Peterson.
And President Cunningham, I mean, I totally agree with the way you've kind of framed it up. And, by my way of thinking, what would be helpful to the board is that when this more narrow research conduct policy is proposed, that there be a discussion in public as to why there are other ways to address those other forms of misconduct, so that we don't leave it ambiguous as to whether or not we're in some way holding people accountable for all forms of misconduct. And so that's my suggestion. Where that line is reaches beyond my kind of expertise with how this particular regulation came to be, but we'll do that homework. And Kaylee Klonica is in the room from OGC, and she is very steeped in all of this. So my suggestion is that the administration, OGC included, better define that whole spectrum for the board as you're voting on one piece of it.
Right. Well, thank you. I think it's been a robust discussion, we say. I really appreciate it, but it's so helpful to clarify. And, we all come from different worlds, have different kind of experiences of this, but to keep that focus. And we'll get back to General Counsel Peterson, President Cunningham, the group, to define the next, and our experts here for the next step in the presentation in June. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the interruption. I apologize.
Thank you. Anything else before we go get a little bit of business left? It's after it's one. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it. Next, we'll consider the consent report. Provost Croson will summarize the items in today's report.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I'm pleased to present the consent report for your consideration. This report includes the usual academic program report, new academic programs, programs that have requested changes, and plans that are to be discontinued. The report asks for your consideration of conferral of tenure on 4 new faculty outside hires. Finally, the report includes a recommendation for the conferral of a faculty emeritus title on a retired contract professor from the School of Public Health. This consent report is presented for your consideration with my and the President's recommendation for approval. I'm happy to answer any questions. Chair Johnson, this concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve on behalf of the board the consent report?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The motion is approved. And that brings us to the information items. Provost Croson, anything to highlight?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I'm pleased to remind you that our regular report of student, faculty, and staff accomplishments has been included in the docket for today's meeting, along with links you may follow to receive more information about them. I'm not going to highlight particular ones. Additionally, we've included 2 university-produced reports mandated by state law and recently disclosed to the state legislature and other government entities. No board action is required on these reports. They are simply presented for your information. Finally, the Board of Regents Policy Openness in Research underwent its comprehensive review this past year. Upon completion, there are no recommended changes at this time. This policy is also included in the docket for information. Chair Johnson, this concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? This meeting is adjourned.